I was about 14 when one night I was walking back from my best friend's house. It was a cold winter and the bike path was extremely icy. It was about 9:30, so the area was deserted. I got about halfway along the path when this old man riding a rickety bike rode straight past me. He looked like he was around 85, so I was a bit confused when I saw him. He rode up along the path and kept going. The path split in two directions and he continued along the first. My house was on the second. I watched him take the turn up the first path and I got onto the second. Again, it was just me and the sound of my footsteps. Now, this was where it got freaking scary. A loud sound of a bike bell came from behind me. Turning back, I saw it was the same old man and he was following me on his bike. I'll never forget his face. I can see it now. The way he stared, cloudy but focused eyes locked on me like I was the only thing in existence. I increased my pace and he kept following. Once I walked up to my porch, the old man watched me while sitting on his bike from the other side of the road. The fact that he now knows my address gave me a sleepless night. But as he hadn't done anything to harm me yet, I ignored the matter. The next morning, I was doing my workouts in my dad's garage when I heard the sound of a shutter click. I quickly looked back but saw no one in the empty streets. I resumed my workouts when I heard a chuckle. I had never turned my head so fast in my entire life. It was him, the creepy old man who followed me home last night.
What the hell? What are you doing here?
No, don't be afraid of me. I just wanted to say hi to such a beautiful girl. Here, I brought these for you.
He took out a small bouquet of roses and held them to my face. His wide eyes stared at me, accompanied by a huge grin. I wanted to say no, but then thought if I just take the flowers, he'd go away. So, I did. As soon as I took the flowers, he took out his phone.
You sure are sweaty. You don't want to get heat stroke. You might want to take your shirt off.
What? No! Get lost!
He started getting close to me and giggling in a very freaky way. I screamed at the top of my lungs and pushed him. He stumbled on the ground and I ran inside to call my parents. By the time I was back with them, the old man had vanished into thin air. My parents had installed a CCTV camera in the garage through which they saw the footage of the man approaching me. I was strictly told not to wander alone and the next time I see him I should call 911. The next day, I got invited to a sleepover at my friend's house. There were 3 of us staying that night. When my dad dropped me at Kathy's, my eyes took a quick scan of the area. I heard a bike bell and got goosebumps, but when I saw it was just a boy passing by, I heaved a sigh of relief.
Is everything all right?
Yeah, don't worry, Dad.
All right. Good night, kiddo. You have fun with your friends. I'll pick you up in the morning, okay?
Good night, Dad. See you tomorrow.
I stood outside Kathy's house watching my dad drive away. I remained there for a few more minutes. Something at the back of my mind kept giving me a bad feeling. I was looking around with terrified eyes, thinking I would see that old man any minute. Then Kathy patted me on the back.
Hey, what are you waiting for? Trixie has already arrived. Jeez, you scared me. Whoa, you look tense, dude. Are you okay? Let's go.
We went in and I filled my friends in about that guy.
Darn, what a creep. If he came near me, I would have kicked him in the nuts.
My friends kind of blamed me, saying that if I hadn't taken the flowers from him, things wouldn't have escalated that far. But I was only a teen who was just starting to learn about the dangers of the world. I had enough talking about the creeper, so I suggested to my friends we should do something fun. That's when Kathy said,
Hey, want to go to the basement and try Dad's drinks? Really? You want a drink? Yeah, why not? Mom and Dad are at the neighbors across the street. They won't be back before midnight.
Now, the basement of Kathy's house was a little different than ours. There was a big window close by the stairs from where we could see outside. Kathy and Trixie started drinking while I stood on the stairs looking outside that window. It was quite dark, so I could barely see anything. As I leaned on the glass to get a good look, A flash of light blinded me. It took a few seconds for my eyes to adjust. Outside the window was a face. The face of an old man plastered against the glass. His eyes were staring back at me. There was an unending hunger in them. The fact that he was looking back at me from the other side of the window made me numb with fear. My suspicion had come true. The creep had followed me to my friend's house as well. Another flash of light appeared as he took my picture on his phone. Seeing the light coming from the window and me staring like a statue, Kathy got up to see. As she came in front of the window, she screamed at the top of her lungs. Loud running footsteps pounded outside and I fainted. All of our parents went straight to the cops that night, but the old man couldn't be identified or found. I haven't seen him after that, and I would always get anxious whenever I was around old people for a long time. Even today, when my son meets a stranger, I keep a strict eye on him. It only takes a few seconds to get traumatized for life these days.
The story you just saw is based on this terrifying footage. The footage serves as a reminder on why you should never leave your kids outside. The following clip shows a young girl simply trying to enjoy her day when a freaky old man appears from the streets after noticing her working out in her garage. At first, the old man hides in the corner and takes out his phone. He starts recording her very sneakily. Then, he walks inside the garage holding flowers. He pretends to be friendly and offers the girl the flowers. You can see the girl hesitating and stepping back at first, but being innocent, she ends up taking the flowers. It's possible that she thought the man will go away if she took the flowers, but the man goes up being even creepier after a few seconds. He takes out his phone and asks the girl if he could take her pictures. Thankfully, the girl sees the red flag and pushes the man onto the ground. She screams and then kicks the old man running inside her house. The man doesn't stay any longer and quickly gets up to run. There's no news on the man getting caught, but hope the girl never had to see him again.
Good afternoon, passengers. This is your captain speaking. First, I'd like to welcome everyone on.
Would you like some wine, sir?
Sure, hit me.
Is everything comfortable, sir?
Well, I was thinking if you had any other seat.
Today's your lucky day, sir. We just got an upgrade on that row. If you want,
I'll take anything.
please, follow me.
Not that good either.
Sorry, sir. This is what we have.
Fine. Ma'am? Hello? Ma'am!
What? Where? Who? Good Lord! Are you trying to kill this poor, beautiful lady?
That wasn't my intention. All I want is to sit down on my seat.
Do you have no regard for people's feelings? I guess women these days are so cheap that men have stopped respecting them.
Enough! Just move away so I can sit! What the hell?
Did I scare you?
Just stay the heck away from me, okay? You don't want to mess with me.
My inner voices told me to tell you. You had beautiful eyes.
What?
Yes, you'll make a beautiful corpse.
Ah!
Sir? Sir, are you okay? Do you feel sick? Do you need a doctor?
Where did that lady go?
Which lady, sir?
The one who was sitting here when you changed my seat.
I'm sorry, but you must have been mistaken. You were sitting here from the very beginning, sir. This is your seat.
What the? This is my seat. Did I just dream it all?
Sir, if you need a doctor, we can...
No, I'm fine. How long till landing?
Not much longer, sir. Just press the bell if you need anything.
Cool, I'll meet you all at your place then. Don't tell others. I want a surprise. Wait, is this even real? Am I still dreaming? Okay, definitely not a dream. Why is she staring like that?
Where do you want to go?
Huh?
Your address. Do you want this cab?
Yes.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. I lived here with my parents until I left for college. The city hasn't changed a bit.
Maybe, but it isn't safe anymore like it used to be.
Why do you say that?
Nothing. Just some rumors going around. I'm not even sure if they're true.
What rumor?
The one about the dancing lady.
Sorry, what?
We shouldn't be talking about her at night.
Why? Who is she anyway?
Some people have seen her on the street at night. She would dance facing her back. Her hands will be dangling in the air and she'll move on her toes from one side to the other. No one has seen her face, because when she chased them, all they did was run.
What bullcrap. Just drive, I have to be somewhere. Here you go.
Thanks.
This city'll never change, neither will its people. Stupid morons. Dancing lady my foot. What the? Why is she dancing like that? Is this all happening, or am I just losing my mind? She was right there, right? What's happening to me?
Are you looking for me?
The story you just saw is loosely based on the trending rumors going around the internet about the Serbian dancing lady. One TikToker uploaded the first footage of his encounter with the creepy lady at night. The guy was walking with his mother when they saw a distant figure dancing in a weird fashion. When the lady noticed their presence, she charged towards them, shouting profanities and claiming to be the ambassador of death. The TikToker claims that the lady shouted that his mother's life was needed for an ancient ritual to resurrect the king of Serbia. The figure's movement, he said, did not seem like that of a human, but was so entrancing, as if moving every muscle in her body. So, do you think the Serbian dancing lady is some urban legend, or a real creep lurking in the deserted streets in the middle of the night? I knew something was wrong with her the day she came for the interview. Her whole demeanor seemed odd to me. She had these old framed glasses and a stern face, but she somehow managed to impress us with her professional behavior. She said her name was Jolene. I took her to the children's bedrooms, one after the other. She didn't seem much interested, though. The way she walked was weird, too. Her upper body was slouched, showing her layered belly. I showed her where the toiletries are kept, but she was more interested in watching TV in the hall across.
Jolene? Jolene! Yeah? Did you hear what I just said? Sorry, I got distracted. Please, pay attention.
Soon, Jolene became a presence in the house. My 5-year-old son and 2-year-old daughter are shy kids. They never made a fuss. Jolene was good with them, but she hardly interacted with my kids. She always kept to her job. This is the only reason she kept being our kids' nanny. But soon, things started to change. One day, I entered my son's room and saw him holding his breath. Jolene was folding his clothes and saying,
Don't cheat now. You know you made a mistake.
I opened the door and said,
What's going on here?
My son's face was turning red. I rushed towards him and screamed.
Stop it!
My son exhaled deeply. I turned towards Jolene.
Why was he holding his breath?
No, Mama. I made a mistake. Jolene told me not to mess up the washed clothes. We don't learn without punishment, right?
What the? Jolene? Is this what you're teaching my kids?
My husband rushed into the room hearing my voice. I explained everything. We both warned Jolene not to punish our kids no matter what. She must inform us first, and we will decide what happens next. Jolene obviously didn't seem much happy about it. I was so mad at her, but I couldn't kick her out of the house because of my husband. I avoided her and cut off her wage for her behavior with my son. Every day after work, Jolene would ask my permission before going home. So one day I was busy doing our taxes. It was around 7 p.m. My kids have yet to go to bed. They wanted to play for some time more, so I let them. Jolene asked me,
Can I go home now? Stay until they go to bed, okay?
She didn't say anything, just looked at me in a very creepy way. A smirk came to her face and she silently left. Time went by and I tucked my kids into bed. My husband and I had dinner and went to bed as usual. It was around 2 in the morning. I woke up feeling thirsty. I came down and didn't bother to switch in the light. The pale moonlight from the window was enough to get by. I poured water into the glass when I felt a deep breath on my shoulder. I turned around and saw a pair of eyes glowing behind me. The owner of the eyes brought her face closer, and I saw it was Jolene.
Can I go home now, ma'am? Oh my god! You're still here? You told me to stay, so... Good lord, Jolene. Yes, you can go home.
I woke my husband up and he drove Jolene home. One day I took my kids to the park for a small picnic. Jolene was holding the pram with my daughter in it. My son ran ahead of us, pointing out to a tree. We sat under the shade of it, and my kids played right in front of my eyes while I had some fresh juice. Jolene was standing in the corner when I saw her looking at a woman. Her face changed. She got nervous, and the woman, too, has started approaching her now. The woman came to us and hugged Jolene.
How are you now? Fine. What are you doing here? I got shifted to the hospital here. Anyways, take care.
She left, and I was confused.
Jolene, how do you know this woman? I had an accident last year. She was a nurse at the Harrington Hospital. She took good care of me.
I couldn't believe her words because the woman said similar things that made sense about this explanation, but deep down inside, I doubted it all. It was a Saturday night. My husband and I went out for dinner with a couple of friends. Jolene looked off more than ever. She hardly spoke a word after that incident in the park. Kissing my kids goodbye, I left in the car with my husband. On the way back, I called to the hospital where Jolene was admitted. I asked about Jolene's record, and they said they gave me the shocking news. Jolene was a patient there, but she never had any accidents. She was there for 3 years, in the psychiatric ward. I knew she was crazy. I knew there was something wrong with her head. My husband never drove faster than that day in our entire life. When we reached home, our house was in complete darkness. All the lights were turned off. We ran in.
Jolene, kids, Mom and Dad are back.
Jolene! But it was dead silence. We walked upstairs and I began hearing this slashing sound. I walked into my daughter's bedroom and she was not there in her bed. The bathroom door was wide open, light coming from it, along with the slashing sound. With my shaking body and racing heart, I peeked inside the bathroom. I saw Jolene sitting on the floor facing her back at me. She had a knife in her hand, soaked in blood. She was stabbing something repeatedly. Suddenly, realizing my presence, she looked back, and I saw a demon hiding in human form. Her huge grin told me what I had lost. The story you just saw is loosely based on the terrifying crime in the late afternoon of October 25th, 2012, at the La Rochelle apartment building on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Lucia and Leo Krim, aged 6 and 2, were murdered by their nanny, Yoselin Ortega. She was convicted of stabbing the children to death with kitchen knives while their mother, Marina Krim, and 3-year-old sister, Nessie, were a few blocks away at a swimming lesson. Upon returning home, their mother and sister found Lucia and Leo dead in a bathtub at the family apartment. On February 22, 2018, 12 jurors were chosen for Ortega's trial, and opening statements began on March 1st in Manhattan Supreme Court. On April 18, 2018, Ortega was found guilty of first-degree murder and second-degree murder. Ortega was sentenced on May 14, 2018, to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
We all have secrets that we like to keep hidden from the world. We fear that if anyone got to know about it, it might scare them off. I have one too, and it's the weirdest of all. For the sake of the story, I would like you to know me as Seth. Sorry, but I can't give out my real name. So, by profession, I'm a graphic designer, which involves hours and hours of sitting in front of the computer. In between my gigs, I watch videos for entertainment, and most of these videos happen to be ASMR mukbangs. A weird satisfaction runs through my veins when I watch people eat. The more food, the better. I can't explain how and why I like watching these videos, but it gives me relief. Not a day goes by when I go to bed without watching at least 4 to 5 mukbangs. But this habit has now developed into an unhealthy obsession. When the mukbanger eats, I could feel saliva forming in my mouth. My pupils dilate as I watch them insert food into their mouths. The messier it gets, the happier I feel. One night, I was watching a girl eat raw eggs when my mom called.
Seth, do you know what happened to the neighbor's kid?
Mom, I'm busy. Can I call you later?
No. The news is all over the paper. Wait, I'll send you a link.
She forwarded this online article, and from there, it all started. Our neighbor's kid was arrested for selling illegal items on the dark web. This wasn't the first time I heard about the dark web. I was going back to my videos when suddenly, an idea sprung into my mind. I have been to the Tor browser quite a few times when I was in college. Old memories hit me and I decided to surf the deep web again. But this time, I wanted to see if there were any creepy videos related to mukbangs. Yes, I know you already think I'm insane, but please bear with me, because what happened next has changed my life forever. After scrolling through cringeworthy websites and advertisements on hiring a hitman, I stumbled onto this link for joining a chat room. The title read, Blank Soup. Thinking I'd found what I was looking for, I clicked on it. The screen started loading and I couldn't keep still.
Why is it taking so long?
Just when I started to think that I had been scammed, the page redirected to a live stream. A man wearing a white tank top was sitting in front of a table in an empty room that had nothing but white walls. His face was down and he looked malnourished, like he hadn't eaten in days. At first, I thought he was unconscious, but then suddenly, he looked up. There was fear in his face. His eyes were wide and he started breathing heavily, looking at the camera. I could count the bones in his rib cage each time he inhaled.
What the?
Suddenly, the door behind him opened and a guy dressed in a weird costume entered. He was looking like some freaky mascot. He had this huge cartoon head and was dressed in black. He was holding a bowl in his hand. The guy placed the bowl in front of that man and handed him an oversized spoon which looked more like a ladle. The man started eating from the bowl using that oversized spoon, and soon, things turned creepier.
What is he eating?
Once the man dipped the spoon into the bowl, I discovered he had been given a bowl of chicken noodle soup. So far, nothing bizarre, right? I mean, I expected to see him eat cockroaches or worms, but it was only a bowl of chicken soup. The man took the first gulp and went for a second, but the more he ate, his behavior changed. He started crying. He was sobbing like he was in a lot of pain. The guy in the costume started patting as the man kept eating and crying at the same time. It all made no sense to me. Within a minute, the door opened again and another guy wearing that same costume entered the room. He had this big jar in his hand and filled the bowl. It was evident by now that they were feeding the man chicken soup forcefully. The way the man ate also signified how hungry he was, because he kept finishing the soup in seconds. But he didn't stop crying though. I had seen many torture videos on the dark web before, but honestly, this one didn't match that craziness at all. There came a point when the man couldn't eat anymore, but he still kept stuffing the food into his mouth with that ladle. Some amount of soup dropped from his mouth and he made this gagging sound.
Okay, now it's getting creepy.
I realized that those identical costume guys intended to overfeed this man with chicken soup. The man ate and ate, and when he couldn't anymore, he vomited on that table. His body was shaking and his eyes were screaming for help, staring into the camera. But those guys kept patting his back, stroking the hair on his head like he was their loving child. And they just wanted him to be healthy. People who were watching this video with me had started to comment under the live stream by then, and I decided to check them for more context to what was happening with this man. Most of the comments were straightforward and freaky on how these men should force this man to do more crazy stuff. I agree, I'm a bit creepier than most people, but those who commented on feeding him worms, snakes, and even his own vomit made me realize how twisted people on the dark web are. After scrolling through the entire chat section, I didn't find anything to shed light on the matter. When I went back to the video, the man was vomiting all over his clothes and yet still eating the chicken soup.
Okay, this is boring now.
I had enough of this, so I exited the website and went to bed for the night. A few days went by and I completely forgot about this video when one day, I saw it on YouTube. Someone has uploaded it onto YouTube and people were going nuts over it. Having watched it from the source, I wasn't expecting much to see. But then I found this one comment that made me crap my pants. Someone has shared a theory which is going viral about this video, and it said,
Poor man. No doubt he loved his wife a lot.
Feeling shocked and confused, I read the thread and got to know it wasn't chicken soup that the man was forced to eat. Rather, he was eating the soup made of his wife's meat. A creepy video surfaced on YouTube in 2005, featuring a man in distress in an empty white room. The man seems to be undergoing mental torture as he cries, and two mysterious masked men are confronting him. The man who seems to be eating something from a bowl. The clip gets even weirder when you notice he uses a comically oversized spoon. The masked man, who was later identified to be dressed as the Ray Ray character, starts to stroke the man soothingly, something that seems to distress the man further. You then see a second Ray Ray character appear and begin massaging the man on the table. This rubbing gesture makes the man finally break into hysterics and fits of fear. According to the legend, the figures in the costumes kidnapped the man and his wife. They then starved the man for days and served him soup made of the remains of his wife, whom they also killed. That was why he was crying and appeared to be about to vomit. That was why the figures patted his back. They were torturing him, mockingly sympathizing with him, as they force-fed him the cannibalized remains of someone he loved. My name is Edward, and I have a question to ask you. What's the strangest thing you experienced? The world is a strange place. When I watch the news, I see programs where people go into caves, mountains, and even criminal hideouts. I, for one, don't need to do any of that, because what I'm about to tell you happened in the place where I should always feel safe, the door of my house. It all started on a Monday afternoon. I was parking my car in the garage after coming home from work, and that's when I saw her for the first time. A strange woman was standing in the house across the street, obsessively ringing the doorbell for the neighbors. This was the time they were picking up their kids from school, so naturally, no one came out of the house. I walked across the street and told her that no one was there. She didn't look like a salesperson or anything like that, because of the insistence with which she was ringing, but when I approached her to talk, I regretted it. Her eyes were wide, her gaze lost, and I even noticed that some drool was dangling from her mouth.
Excuse me, miss? There's no one home at this hour. They take their children to school.
At my comment, she just looked at me for a few seconds and began to laugh frantically, as if what I had said was the funniest thing in her life. As she laughed, she looked at me with a face of indescribable fury, while at the same time, she rang the bell louder and louder. I must admit that this situation scared me a lot, even though she was just an unarmed woman ringing the doorbell. Her terrifying look penetrated my eyes and gave me chills. I decided to leave the house. The next day, I would tell the neighbors what happened. As soon as I got home and told my family, we all went to see the woman through the window, but she was gone. I thought about calling the police to let them know, but it didn't make any sense. Surely I would never see that woman again, or so I thought.
What? Who could it be at this hour?
When I woke up, it was after 2 a.m. Who would be ringing my doorbell so late? It was her, the same woman who had been ringing the neighbor's door. Now she was at my house.
What do you want? Get out of here or I'll call the police.
Hey! Let me in! Let me in now! This is my house!
Your house? You're mistaken. This isn't your house.
In response to my refusal, the woman rang the doorbell more and more violently.
This is my house, and I will come in! Open my door! Now! Edward, what's going on?
Anna, call the police. Tell them there's someone trying to break into our house.
I approached the door again, and when I looked through the hole, I jumped back in shock.
What the? Get away from my house! We're calling the police!
Suddenly, the woman began to laugh hysterically, the same way she laughed when she was at the neighbor's house. She was not only ringing the doorbell, but also kicking the door angrily. But she never stopped laughing. With each passing second, this woman became more and more violent. She started ripping all the plants out of their pots and throwing them against my door. The neighbors' windows were slowly opening, and they were looking at us with concern.
This is my house! My house! My house! My house!
Nobody knew what was going on. The woman ran around the whole house, looking for a way to get in. Through the back door, through the windows. She was just trying to get in somehow. Even though Anna had taken the children upstairs, I could hear them crying inconsolably. The woman went back to the main entrance and kept ringing the doorbell frantically. She was ramming the door as hard as she could while still ringing the doorbell every chance she got. I knew it was impossible for her to break down the door, since it was fortified, but I held it anyway. I was terrified of what would happen if somehow this woman managed to get into my house. But after a few seconds of struggle, the police arrived. They didn't need to ask her what was going on, because as soon as she saw them, she ignored them and kept ringing the doorbell. She did not put up any resistance to being stopped, but for some reason, I could see how she forced her arm out and kept ringing the doorbell. The police told me that this woman had never caused a disturbance before. She had no criminal record and was not under the influence of any drugs. We never knew why she did what she did, although honestly, I never asked. Today, we still wonder what would have happened if this woman had gotten into our house. I mean, she wasn't armed and she didn't look particularly strong. In theory, she looked like a normal woman, but if you had been there, if you had seen her terrifying honey-colored eyes staring back at you, you would have understood that this woman was capable of anything. On March 27, 2022, in California, a strange woman begins ringing the doorbell of a family home. The woman claims to the owner that this is her home. In this dramatization, we saw everything that happened, only omitting the high frequency of explicit language that the real footage has.
What's up, the house?
Who are you looking for?
My house, what the Hello?
Go away.
My house,
Unless you got the wrong house, seriously, go.
Oh, well, I jumped off my thing. It says my house.
There used to be this girl I babysat when I was in high school, and she was in primary school. Her name was Rachel. She was the oldest of 3 girls, and in pretty much every way possible, she was perfect. Her young siblings would always faithfully follow her example, which made babysitting for that family the easiest job I ever had. She was so beautiful too, and I knew she would have a bright future and would be loved by everyone in her life. Honestly, I was a little jealous of that, but I was still sad when she got old enough to take care of herself and her younger siblings. Then, eventually, I went off to college, so for several years I never saw Rachel or her family. In my third year of studying psychology, I finally had a reason to reach out to her and catch up. I was doing a study on the effects of meditation, and I needed some subjects. Since I could use anybody for the study, I decided that the first person I wanted to use was Rachel. She was the perfect person.
Hello? Hi, is this Rachel? It's me, Caroline. Oh my God, Caroline! It's been so long. How are you? I'm good. Been very busy with college. I missed you a lot. I missed you too. I've been struggling a bit with high school. It was better when you were here helping me with my homework. So, anyway, what made you call? Well, I might have an opportunity for you to make some money. I just need to pick your brain about a few things and ask that you keep it a secret. How much money? $100. $100? Deal. Great. Can you meet me tomorrow? I sure can. I'll be at the Richmond station around 5:30 once I get off school.
I was excited to meet up with Rachel as soon as possible. I wasn't in any rush to finish the study, but I just wanted to see her again. I made sure to be there to meet her just before she got there. It's hard to describe just how my heart fluttered when I saw Rachel again. She was even more amazing than I remembered. But the greatest part about seeing her then was that instead of hanging out at her parents' house with her other siblings, I got to take her over to my house for the first time. Just us. We caught up on the train ride over to my part of town, and we got so talkative that I completely forgot to mention the study I was doing. When we got off the train and started walking to my apartment, we passed by a pizza place. We were both a little hungry, so we decided to stop in and get a pie. Afterwards, I also picked up a case of beer. Rachel was a little apprehensive to drink, but I assured her it wouldn't be a problem.
I'm not sure I'm old enough for that, Caroline. Oh, don't worry about it. I'm not your babysitter anymore. It won't hurt to loosen up a little. Well, if you say so.
When we reached my apartment, we hung out for a couple more hours, eating pizza, drinking beer, and just laughing and reminiscing about the old days, really having the best of times. Then, out of nowhere, I remembered I was supposed to be doing a study on Rachel.
Oh, crap. I forgot all about it. I'm sorry. I should have reminded you. No, it's okay. We can still do it. Let me just set up the room.
The study involved recording the difference in a person's mood before and after a 15-minute session of meditation. There was more to it than that, but it's been so many years since then I could hardly remember. I started with a short questionnaire. Then I lit some candles and turned off the lights. Then I guided Rachel through a simple practice of meditation, controlling her breathing, letting go of her thoughts, and becoming mindful of her body and her surroundings. Something strange started happening after a few minutes, though. After I got Rachel in a good state and let her be for a bit, I was supposed to check in on her and ask her the same questions as before. However, she had become almost unresponsive, like she could barely hear me or even remember that I was there. She wouldn't open her eyes either, and even when she did try to respond to me, her words were so slurred together that I couldn't understand a word she was saying. Then, out of nowhere, she fell back on the bed and passed out.
Rachel, are you okay?
She only got worse from there, twitching like she was having some kind of seizure and foaming at the mouth.
Oh my God, Rachel, wake up!
I tried to shake her from the episode, but she was inconsolable. It was almost like she was possessed.
Rachel, please, are you in there? Rachel? Rachel, if you're awake, tell me now.
There was no response from her, just silence.
Perfect.
Finally, my plan was working. A bunch of greasy food, some alcohol, a bit of calming meditation, and a whole lot of sleeping pills crushed up and sprinkled on her slices of pizza while she wasn't looking was making her totally catatonic and vulnerable. Now, she was completely defenseless. I grabbed the telephone cord on my nightstand and wrapped it around Rachel's neck and then squeezed with all my might. But then, somehow, Rachel woke up.
Caroline, what are you doing?
Don't fight it.
She was stronger than I thought, but I was always bigger than her.
In 1999, an Australian girl named Rachel Barber unknowingly made a decision that would cost her life. Her once trusted babysitter, Caroline Robertson, offered Rachel a seemingly easy and harmless way to earn a bit of quick cash. Little did Rachel know, Caroline had long been jealous of her looks and natural talents and planned to literally replace her and become her. For this to happen, Caroline hatched a plan to lure Rachel into a trap, where she would make it seem like the teenage girl had run away from home and disappeared. But in reality, Caroline planned to make sure Rachel was never seen alive again. Afterwards, Caroline planned to lose 50 pounds, get a nose job, and then even change her name to Rachel Barber. However, after a week of searching for their missing daughter, Caroline Robertson was connected to the disappearance and brought into custody. It took her months to finally admit to the truth of what she did. Caroline Robertson was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison, but she was released 5 years early in 2015.
This happened when I was working to keep up with my college bills. I lived in a small apartment close to campus. I was an extrovert and enjoyed meeting new people. But not anymore. It was a warm Saturday night. I was drinking lemonade sitting in a cafe when I got a text from a guy. For the sake of the story, let's call him Andrew. He said he too went to the same college as me and got my number from a friend. After chatting with him for a bit, he said he was near my location and wanted to meet. It sounded rushed, but I was alone and needed some company. I texted him my exact location and waited for his arrival. After 10 minutes, he walked into the cafe. He was a tall, handsome guy who looked exactly like the picture. Having the first green flag, I waved at him and he smiled. He sat down at my table and we started talking.
Good that you were close by.
Yeah, thank God I decided to take my truck to the car wash.
You're funny.
Within the next 20 minutes, we were holding hands like high schoolers. There was something about him that was just really attractive to me. We had dinner and went for a long drive in his car. He had this black pickup truck which he said was a gift from his dad. After fooling around in random streets, Andrew pulled over the vehicle under a tree. So, you want to go hiking?
What? Right now? But I didn't even bring my stuff.
He pointed at this big rucksack in the back seat and said he loves night hiking, so he always carries his things. So far, there were no red flags, so I agreed. Andrew said he forgot his flashlight, but the camping ground was close. Also, he knows his way around these woods, hence the moonlight will be enough for him to find the way. I trusted him. I didn't think things were going to go bad. We were walking into the woods. It was dark and scary. I could see fireflies wandering around us. A hooting owl almost gave me a heart attack.
It's too dark for me. I'm switching on my flashlight.
As I went to turn on the flashlight, Andrew's tight grip jammed my wrist. He looked me in the eye and told me to be quiet. Shh! That's when I felt my heartbeat increase. My voice started to shake.
Andrew? What's happening?
He put his hand on my mouth and pulled me behind a tree. I wanted to scream, but I was so frozen that I could only stare at him with wide, freaked-out eyes. Just then, I heard a snap in the distance. Andrew looked to our left, and I realized he was scared too. He was looking at something which seemed to threaten him. Was that why he told me to be quiet? But what is it? Andrew looked back at me and whispered into my ear. There's a man behind that bush. I saw his bloody knife shine in the moonlight.
Oh my God.
We need to be very still and slowly back our way to the car. Stay still until I tell you to run, okay? I nodded my head, and soon I heard footsteps approaching us.
Oh no, he's coming this way! Run! Run!
We started to run. I didn't care about the dried branches cutting my skin on the way. I just ran.
Ah!
heard Andrew scream and saw him trip and fall onto the ground.
Andrew!
I rushed back to him and got him up. Even though he sprained his leg, he didn't stop until we were inside the car. He locked the doors right away, and we saw a man. He was standing under a tree, hiding in the shadows. I bet he was looking at us in anger. I could see his demonic eyes burn with regrets even in that pitch black. Andrew spent the night in my apartment, and we never knew who that man was until years later. We never got to see his face. Andrew said he only saw his silhouette. Years later, I was sitting in the living room when Andrew, my now husband, turned on the TV. Ted Bundy, the infamous serial killer, was caught at that time. When the journalist asked him about having close calls of getting caught, Bundy narrated an incident from a moonlight night in the woods down the highway. He said he was dumping a victim's body there when he encountered a boy and girl coming his way. They seemed like hikers, he said. Bundy thought they saw him and chased them to stop him from escaping. What he said after that made my husband traumatized for life. Bundy mentioned that the guy probably tripped, and it was the victim's body he tripped on. Lucky for him, the guy never bothered to check. And Bundy realized that the couple never saw his face. It gives me chills to think about how we escaped a deranged serial killer. We also live with deep regret. If we had just seen his face, we would have been able to report him to the cops. So many innocent lives could have been saved then. The story you just saw is based on an actual incident with a couple who later shared it on YouTube. Sometime during the 1970s, a young couple went on a first date. They were having a good time, even though it was awkward like most first dates are. It was getting late and the man asked the woman if she wanted to go on a late-night hike. He was very experienced with the area and had hiked there many times. She agreed and they went off towards the woods. They arrived at the spot and got out of the car, walking into the woods. As they were walking into the dark woods, the man felt something hit his foot. It was very soft. The feeling in his stomach was extremely intense now that something was wrong. He paused for a second and continued off without finding what was the soft thing he felt on the ground. Years later, that very same couple was happily married. They were both watching TV one day and stumbled upon an interview with the famous serial killer Ted Bundy. The interviewer asked when was the closest time he was almost caught during his killing spree. Ted Bundy said he was almost caught once in the woods when a man stepped on a dead body while hiding in the woods, but he just walked off and didn't investigate. He told the interviewer where and when it happened. It turns out it was the same couple.
3 months before my lease ended at the last place I lived in, I got 2 new roommates. I'd been spoiled by the previous people because they were so easy to live with that I forgot how bad roommates can sometimes be. I was finishing my degree and working a lot, while these new guys were the kind of insane party junkies that get thrown out of frats. They would throw huge parties and trash the house every other night, playing obnoxiously loud music while I was trying to sleep so I could get up in the morning. Asking them to keep it down would only result in me being accosted by the entire party of drunks for being a downer. These guys really didn't live in the real world, and they made living in my own house a waking nightmare. I was stuck with them until the end of my lease, but it turned out that for another reason, I wasn't even able to survive that long. My landlord had installed a Ring doorbell camera before I even moved in, and all the residents were given access to it. I had the app, but I ignored almost all the notifications because it was always just droves of drunken party guests. One night, however, I got a notification at 5 o'clock in the morning, well after the partying had ended for the night. I bothered to check and saw something that made my heart skip a beat. There was a masked man standing in front of the door, completely covered head to toe and holding up a sign. It said something that only somebody who had been inside the house would know. "You idiots get all your bowls and plates from Target." They stood there for about 10 seconds, then left without doing anything else. As creepy as it was, I figured it was some kind of joke on my roommates from one of their party friends, so I ignored it and got up to go to work. The next night, though, it happened again. I could tell it was somebody else, and they were wearing a purge mask instead of just a bandana. Again, they were just standing there at 5 o'clock in the morning, holding up a sign that said, "Joshua needs to buy toilet paper." I crawled out of bed in fright. I'm Joshua, but my bathroom is inside of my bedroom and not connected to the hall, so that meant somebody had been in my room recently. I checked the bathroom, and sure enough, there were only 2 squares left on the roll of toilet paper.
Now, I was starting to get worried. When I got home from class the following day, I showed the video to my roommates. "Hey guys, is this one of your friends or something?" They looked at it with stupid facial expressions, then looked at me like I was crazy.
What are you talking about, man? There's nobody there.
Yeah, that must have been the wind. The wind? Come on, are you both blind? There's a person standing right there. Look!
Chill out, bro. I'm looking, and I'm looking at nothing. It's just the street.
Seriously, dude, are you feeling alright? You're kinda scaring me. I don't want to have a crazy roommate. Crazy? I'm not crazy. But all the two of them did was try to convince me I was schizophrenic. I intended to send the video to other people, but I ended up getting sidetracked with chores, and then work, and ended up forgetting about it. Sure enough, the next night, at the same time, it happened again. It was another person, covered head to toe in clothes, but wearing a Guy Faux mask, and he wasn't holding a sign. Instead, his face was right up against the camera, and he was saying something.
"Hey, Jonathan. Sleeping well? I came to tell you something. There's this friend of mine who's really got it out for you in a special kind of way. He's been watching you for days. He knows you do a good job washing between your cheeks. He knows you haven't had a girl over in weeks. And he knows you leave Cheeto crumbs in your sheets. Actually, he's watching you from the closet right now. Well, that's all for now. Good night. Sleep tight."
My blood turned to ice. I turned on my phone's flashlight and slowly got out of bed, shaking like a leaf. I crept up to the closet and threw open the door, but there was nobody in there. Nothing except a little piece of paper with the words, "Look behind you," written on it. I jerked my head back and almost had a heart attack. There was someone staring at me through my window. The same guy who was at my door wearing that stupid mask. I shouted for help and barged into my roommate's room, finding them both passed out on the floor. I forced them to wake up and watch the video, but they still wouldn't listen to me.
"Dude, there's nobody there. Leave us alone, you crazy weirdo. What's wrong with you guys?"
Nothing! You're the guy who keeps hallucinating! Oh no, I'm so scared of my gang stalkers. Won't somebody help me? Fine, screw you!
I gave up on trying to get help from them and sent the videos to my landlord and a few other people. They all confirmed that there was somebody stalking my front door, proving that my crummy roommates were gaslighting me. I packed up my things and broke my lease the next day. Those jerks followed me to the door as I said I was leaving, grinning like total creeps. They opened the door for me and I almost walked straight into somebody who was standing right outside the door, right in the spot where those people in the video would always stand. And all three of them were looking at me the same way.
Wait a minute. It was you guys? What the hell?
Well, it worked, didn't it? You don't want to live with us anymore?
You did all that just so you could get your loser friend to move in with you?
Also because all you do is ruin the fun we're trying to have in the house. Now that you're gone, it's gonna be a riot every single night.
Alright then, I see how it is. I wouldn't want to keep living here with you anyway. Goodbye.
Good riddance.
A chill ran down my spine. I recognized his voice as the man in the Guy Faux, confirming that those unhinged animals gaslit me to the brink of insanity, just so they could get me to move out. I stood on the sidewalk, my arms crossed as I watched the parade pass by. July 4th wasn't my favorite time of the year, but the festivities always made it a bit better. I'd just finished watching the marching band when I noticed something strange. A man in an Uncle Sam costume was staring at me, directly across from me, and he seemed to be walking along with the parade. He was wearing a full face mask, but I could see his eyes and mouth. His eyes were dark and black with white shining highlights, his teeth crooked and yellow, and his top hat was tattered. Still, he glided with the parade as he danced and pirouetted along, ever closer to my side of the street. I felt uneasy but assumed it was just part of the show, and with another performer putting on a dizzying gymnastics show, I quickly forgot about the strange man in the Uncle Sam outfit and clapped with everyone else.
Quite the show, isn't it?
Yeah, they really did well this year.
The parade ended shortly after that, and I had already forgotten everything about the man in the Uncle Sam suit. But as I got into my car, I noticed him again, standing off in the distance, watching me. His eyes seemed to pierce through me, and I felt a chill run up my spine. I shrugged it off as mere paranoia and tried to focus on the traffic. If you've ever been in traffic directly after a July 4th parade, you'll know the cars are virtually at a standstill. So, when the man began to approach me from a distance, I hurriedly pressed the lock on my doors. And then I pressed it again, making sure all my doors were locked. He was already at my window, tapping at it with a wild grin on his face. I nearly recoiled in disgust, but I managed to compose myself. Maybe he just wanted to ask for money for his performance. I rolled my window down a crack.
Hey, baby, I saw you while performing. I was wondering if I could get your number. I couldn't pass up on a cutie like you.
Yeah, sure, I guess.
I know that was stupid of me, but I wasn't thinking at that moment. I figured I'd just give him my number and he'd leave me alone. Little did I know that this was a fatal mistake. I drove back home, my mind running a million miles an hour. I was busy with work and I didn't even remember that creepy performer. I'd figured he'd call or text me, I'd ignore his call, and that would be that. The funny thing about phone numbers that I learned afterward, though, is that they can be used to find your address. If someone has their number, all it takes is a reverse search and they can know everything about you. Lying in bed later that night, I was drifting off to sleep when I jolted awake. A loud crashing noise echoed through the house. I figured it was just my cat, but I hoped he hadn't spilled anything. Sighing, I climbed out of bed and walked down the long hallway toward the stairs. As I did, I felt a weird, empty pit in my stomach. I'm not sure why, but I felt like something was wrong. I got goosebumps and a feeling of dread set in. For some reason, I didn't want to see what was down those stairs. Still, I dismissed this feeling as nonsense and rounded the corner. As I did, my heart dropped. The man in the Uncle Sam costume was rummaging through my things, no longer wearing his strange outfit. Still, his black eyes and yellow teeth were unmistakable. Now that he was no longer wearing his mask, I could see his face. I couldn't help it. I let out a scream. His face was mutilated, covered in scars and cuts, his lips hanging off one side of his face. He fixed his gaze on me and started walking towards me, a menacing look in his eyes.
Shouldn't have given me your number, baby. Shouldn't have done that.
Get the hell away from me! What do you want?
I want to know you, baby. I'll leave if you can tell me about yourself.
Okay. What do you want to know?
I didn't know what else to do. He was at the top of the stairs next to me now, and he loomed above me. His wild face was enough to make me want to rip away and run. But where would I go? Where could I hide from him? He stared into my eyes and asked me a million questions. He wanted to know where I worked, who my friends were, and what I liked to do. His questions became more intense and demanding. He wanted everything from me. Finally, he let out a guttural scream and lunged at me wildly.
You're perfect! Perfect! I need you!
I dodged to the side, but I felt his cold and sweaty grip on my arm. He tried to drag me towards an open window.
No!
I screamed, struggling against his grasp. Suddenly, the sound of sirens filled the air. I saw flashing red and blue lights from the window, and the man must have seen it too. He let go of my wrist, anger spreading over his face.
You're betraying me? You need to love me!
Help! Help me!
I could hear footsteps outside now, and the man wildly grabbed me, holding me close to him desperately.
I'll hurt her! Stay away!
But before he could do anything, the police burst through the door and tackled him to the ground. After he was restrained, they asked me a few questions, and I told them everything. It turns out that after the parade, Robert Crimo, I learned his name when the police took him away, had actually been reported for suspicious behavior. The police had tracked him down using his phone, which he had been using to search for my number and other weird things. The police told me it was lucky that someone else had noticed how weird he was acting. If it wasn't for that, who knows what might have happened to me. After a few days, the police finally released me and allowed me to go back home. I've been more aware of my surroundings ever since then, and I'm always keeping an eye out for suspicious activity. The weirdest thing about Robert Crimo, however, wasn't his creepiness or even his behavior. The weirdest thing was that he seemed to think I was special or perfect in some way. To this day, I still don't understand what he saw in me. But according to the police, it could have been so much worse. According to documents they found on his phone, he had plans to commit atrocities at that parade, and the only thing that changed his mind was me. When I was a sophomore in college, I was friends with this guy named Steven that wanted to start a popular YouTube channel. During our freshman year, we were dorm mates, and he would talk about his channel all the time, trying to get me to give him input on video ideas. I always thought he was pretty uncreative, but he did have a somewhat entertaining personality. Of course, I was a big part of his first handful of videos. However, after we moved in with different people the next year, I stopped being in his videos and didn't hang out with him as much. That was until he hit me up to do a McDonald's mukbang video, because none of his other roommates wanted to do it, even though he was offering to pay for all the food. Honestly, I always thought the concept was dumb, but as a broke college student, I found it difficult to say no to a day's worth of free food, so I agreed. The next Saturday, we met up at his dorm. As soon as I saw Steven for the first time in months, I was shocked to see that he had dressed up as Ronald McDonald. Clearly, this was for a visual gag, but he did a terrible job on the costume. He looked like a dollar store nightmare version of the real Ronald McDonald, or like a roadside junkie who robbed a party city and went crazy with a paintbrush. To be fair, it made me burst out laughing immediately, which made us both more hopeful that it would be a successful video. We put together his filming set so we could start as soon as we got back. Then we got into his car and drove to the nearest McDonald's. I've always felt bad whenever I made life more difficult for people working in the fast food industry. I could hear the deep sadness and the intense loathing in the voice of the drive-thru worker when Steven ordered 2 of everything on the menu. Of course, it almost took an hour for them to complete our entire order, during which time Steven vlogs some of the behind-the-scenes action. Once we finally got our obscene amount of food, we drove straight back to the dorm and covered the entire folding table with a ridiculous display of McDonald's. Then we sat down and started filming and got to it. We both fasted all day and skipped dinner the night before, so we would be super hungry whenever we got to the mukbanging, which meant we started out eating very quickly. I've never been a big fan of McDonald's, but those first 3 or 4 burgers were delicious. After about 1,000 calories, though, I started to slow down. On the other hand, I don't know what Steven was on, but he was like a bottomless pit. He wasn't slowing down for anything. He kept egging me on to keep going.
What are you slowing down for, bro? Go big or go home!
It's so much food, man. We barely made a dent.
Exactly. That's why we can't quit now. We haven't even gone through the burgers.
If I eat one more burger right now, I'm never gonna eat another burger in my life.
Fine, you big baby. I'll finish the burgers. You get started on the nuggets.
All right. By then, the nuggets were cold and tasted like cardboard. The only thing that made them edible was dipping them in an excess amount of sauce. I ate 10 nuggets and then started munching on fries because I couldn't stomach anything else. Before long, I was starting to feel physically ill. I put my head on the table just for Steven to start flipping out on me.
Hey, you can't sleep. Look at all this food that's left. Why are you quitting on me, man? Go big or go home.
I can't, man. I just can't. I think I'm gonna throw up.
Only if you stop. You gotta keep stacking food on top to push down the stuff on the bottom.
I don't think that's how it works, man.
Stop! Steven McDonald knows best. Isn't that right, folks? Look at this quitter. Everyone boo the quitter.
Who are you talking to, bro?
The audience, duh!
Oh man. I think I'm gonna be sick. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Oh no, you don't!
I tried to get up so I could go throw up in the toilet, but Steven jumped up and grabbed me.
You're not going anywhere! Keep eating!
Then he started shoving McChickens into my mouth, and out of everything on the McDonald's menu, I've always hated McChickens the most. There's just so much mayo and soggy lettuce. It's disgusting.
Eat it! Go big or go home!
I tried to get Steven off of me, but it felt like the blood in my veins was turning into concrete. I didn't even have time to swallow one McChicken before he shoved the next one into my mouth. I couldn't even breathe. Once I started choking and gagging, it was over. A whole bunch of my stomach contents came up and it couldn't get past the blockage in my throat, so it all came out my nose. Of course, Steven thought that this was hilarious footage. He finally let go of me and I fell to the floor as he went to grab the camera for some close-up shots of my embarrassing condition.
Look at this loser! You see, folks? This is what happens when you disappoint the Stephen McDonald!
What's wrong with you, man? You're sick!
What's that? I can't hear you over the sound of you failing the mukbang challenge!
Steven even started throwing food at me and making sounds like How To Basic. That's when I knew I had to get out of there. As soon as I cleared my airways enough to breathe, I started crawling for the door. Steven filmed me, laughing like a sicko the whole time. I finally got to my feet and ran out the door. I stumbled home looking like a complete mess. Obviously, I never associated with Steven again, and I reported his video, and it got taken down.
I was flying solo to see family for Easter one year, when I had one of the worst encounters with a creep I've ever experienced. I first saw him during my layover. It was in the middle of the night, because I opted for a red-eye flight with a 3-hour layover in a small airport to save money. It was the first time I'd been there. The whole place was eerily empty and quiet due to the time and flight restrictions back then. I was hoping to catch some Z's while I waited for my next flight. I thought it would be easy. The only people sitting near me were a younger couple cuddling to my left and a man laying down to my right, who was minding his business perfectly and not bothering me at all. However, right as I was dozing off, I sensed an approaching presence and my eyes flicked open to see a guy creeping towards me, clearly trying not to be noticed. I froze with my eyes open and stared as he continued totally unfazed. Getting caught actually made him smile. His teeth were jagged and covered in thick, nasty plaque, and he had a huge broken nose with boils on the nostrils. The rest of his face was riddled with acne too. His hair was unkempt and greasy to match, and altogether, it looked like he just got out of high school after graduating on the 5th try. Before long, he was far too close for comfort.
Stop! What are you doing?
Oh, you startled me! Don't yell at me like that!
I startled you? You're the one coming up on me like you're trying to steal my bag.
I would never! You don't really think I'd be that type of guy to do that, do you?
I was so floored by how ridiculous he was that I couldn't think of anything to say. He used the pause as an opportunity to sit right next to me.
Excuse me? Did I say you could sit next to me?
Don't be such a Karen. Well, actually, you look more like a Stacy in those pajama pants.
Don't look at my pants. I don't want to talk to you. I'm trying to sleep.
I just wanted to ask if you were also going to Boston. But it's a silly question, isn't it? Why else would you be waiting for the plane to Boston?
Leave me alone already before I pepper spray you, you creep!
You don't have any pepper spray. The TSA confiscated it. Remember? You're unarmed, sugar.
Suddenly, the blood drained from my face. How did he know that? I kept thinking. He must have been behind me in the security line at the last airport, which meant he'd been following me and watching me the whole time. Right about then is when I reached over and shook the man sleeping next to me until he woke up.
Are you threatening me?
Huh? What's going on?
Babe, this man is making me uncomfortable.
What? Who?
Come on, man. Who do you think you are? That's my wife you're talking to.
Get out of here before we have a problem, you greasy loser.
Thankfully, the creep didn't talk back and walked away pouting. I'd never spoken to that other guy in my life, but I'm glad he was quick to see what was going on and helped me out. I thanked him profusely for pretending to be my husband for a moment. Then I let him go back to sleep. I was not able to relax after that, however. The whole time, I could see that ugly jerk staring at me from the next gate over. I hoped that he wasn't about to get on the same flight as me, but despite my prayers, when they called us to board, he got in line behind me. I breathed a sigh of relief when it turned out he booked a ticket for a seat 10 rows in front of mine. Otherwise, I would have been stuck with him breathing down my neck for the entire flight. It was about 3 in the morning when we finally took off, and I was exhausted. A few minutes into the air and I finally got comfortable enough to fall asleep. I ended up being out for the entire flight. I woke up a few minutes before landing to the sound of the flight attendants chattering about refreshments and flight procedures. But to my utter terror, when I opened my eyes, I saw that same creep staring directly at me just inches from my face. I jumped up and gasped.
Oh, what's wrong with you? How long have you been sitting there?
Not long, just a couple of hours.
You mean the entire flight? Why can't you get away from me?
I immediately reached up to press the button to call the flight attendant, but he grabbed my wrist and held my hand back.
I fell in love with you the moment I saw you. Whatever you need, please let me get it for you. Clearly that husband of yours is no good.
I took great pleasure in slapping him across the face.
I need you to leave.
Unfortunately, the sicko seemed to enjoy that a little more than I expected.
So you really do have some Boston in you. That's good. Why don't I show you my favorite bar once we land? I can drive us there so you don't have to call a ride.
Luckily, a flight attendant finally showed up in response to my shouting.
Excuse me, is everything all right here?
Yes, everything is fine. Please go away.
This man is assaulting me. Tell him to go back to his seat, or I don't care what you do, just get him away from me. Sir, I will have to ask you to return to your seat. It was up in the 3rd row, wasn't it?
Oh, well, I guess you're right. That's my wife, by the way.
He's lying. Please, you have to listen to me.
I told the flight attendant everything, and thankfully, she took serious interest. And Casey followed me off the plane. She called airport security and requested a guard to escort me until I left the airport. I thanked her 1,000 times, but I still couldn't rest until my brother picked me up and got me out of there.
I can't get service. I've been trying and trying, but I can't get any service to my phone. I know I probably won't make it out of here, but I have to keep trying. The only issue is I can't leave my room. I can see the shadows right outside my window. I was on a road trip. I don't usually like road trips, but this one was fun. I was headed to see my parents in Colorado, driving through the mountains late at night when it happened. As I drove over the mountain pass, the snow was falling so thick that I could barely see the ominous pine trees to each side of the road. My car's radio began to crackle and sputter. I was listening to music, so obviously this caught my attention. I didn't think much about it at the time, but suddenly the car sputtered and lost all power. My car drifted to a stop. I tried to get it started, but nothing happened. No matter how much I pushed the gas or turned the key in the ignition, nothing worked. I was stuck in the middle of nowhere with no help in sight. I was just about to give up, but then I saw headlights coming down from the mountain pass. I could feel the excitement coursing in my veins, driving away the panic. I'm saved.
Hey, you there! Stop the car! I need a lift!
I desperately waved at the vehicle. It was an old shabby Jeep with dark windows, and I was surprised when it slowed down. The driver's window rolled down, and inside was an old man with a face that left me with chills. His eyes seemed to drift upward, looking more toward the sky than at me. He had warts all over his face, which seemed gaunt and stricken with some kind of illness. Still, his wide smile seemed kind enough.
How can I help you, boy?
Yeah, hey, sorry. My car broke down. I was wondering if I could hitchhike to the nearest hotel or town. His smile seemed to widen then, and he fixed his eyes on me. The nearest hotel? I can take you to the nearest hotel. Thank you, man. You're awesome. I hopped into his Jeep, feeling a little uneasy but grateful nonetheless. We drove off into the darkness, neither of us saying much. I was so tired that eventually I just fell asleep. When I woke up, we had pulled up to a hotel in the middle of nowhere. The building was old and run down, with a sense of dilapidation spreading over the entire premise. The old man was staring at me as he parked his car. I was about to ask him what he wanted, but he spoke first. Enjoy your stay, son. You can stay as long as you like, but don't try to leave. What? What are you talking about? Just don't try to leave. Don't try to leave. His smile gave me shivers. Still, I thanked him for his time and hopped out. I walked toward the dark glass doors and entered the lobby. As I did, however, I felt sick to my stomach. Nobody was in the lobby. It was empty and smelled stale, moldy, like it hadn't been used in years. The walls were covered with these dark paintings and strange symbols, which made me feel very uneasy. I could sense something was wrong here, but I didn't know what yet. I tried to leave, but as soon as I turned around, I saw a key card and a note at my feet. The key card was for room 113, and the note said, "For David, enjoy your stay." I stared at it with a sense of wonder and confusion. It was for me. But how's that possible? Maybe the old man called ahead? I shook my head. I didn't care. I was getting out of there. I grabbed the key card and walked right out the door and into the parking lot, then towards the dark line of trees. As I did, however, I stopped in my tracks. Beyond me, in the dark and snowy night, I could see shadowy and monstrous figures. They never really seemed to move when I was watching them, but whenever I blinked, they came closer. I ran back into my room and slammed the door shut, locking it tight. I quickly grabbed my phone and Googled the sign I had seen on the building earlier. Hotel de los Muertos. My stomach dropped as I read the description. This hotel. It had been a regular hotel years ago, until it fell into unuse and was eventually cursed, covered in foul demonic signs and voodoo magic. As I scrolled down the page, however, I saw something that frightened me even worse. I saw a photo of the same old man who had brought me here earlier. He was listed as the deceased owner of Hotel de los Muertos. I have to get out of here. What the hell? I closed my browser and began to dial 911, then hit enter. Nothing happened. I looked at my phone. No service. I was doomed. I could hear the voices of the shadows now getting closer and closer to my room. There was a tapping on the window, and then it started. A shadowy hand reaching out of the darkness, clawing at the glass, slowly and surely breaking inside. If you ever break down on a mountain pass in the middle of the night in Colorado, don't hitchhike with whoever tries to pick you up. Whatever you do, don't follow the old man back to his hotel. And if you do, you should never try to leave. If you try to leave, they'll be ready to capture you, imprisoning you in a place of terror and despair. All you can do is pray for some kind of service to your phone so that you can call for help. You won't get any, though.
I'm never gonna be friendly to the new kid again. It's not like they're a bad person, it's just something about them makes my skin crawl. All the kids at school gave him a wide berth and avoided him like the plague, but I tried to be nice, at least to start with. I mean, why wouldn't you be nice to the new guy? I've been a new guy before and I know how it feels. Or I thought I did. Hey, David, you're really cool. Thanks, man, you too. I hope you had a good first day. I did. Thanks. Say, I was wondering, do you want to come have a sleepover at my house? Yeah, sure, why not? I didn't want to. Heck, it wasn't like he was my friend or anything, but I still felt slightly obligated to be friendly to him, and so I decided to go along with it. The few minutes of school left passed quickly, and I was soon on my bike and headed over to the address he had given me. When I arrived at his place, it was all kinds of wrong. There were busted windows and broken furniture littering the lawn, and none of the lights were working despite it being nighttime. Still, I wanted to give him a chance, so I went in anyway. Once inside, everything seemed okay, if a little different from what I was used to. Strange paintings hung on the walls, and there wasn't much in terms of furniture, but we managed to make ourselves comfortable enough by playing video games together, until eventually we decided to go to bed. One thing that was weird, however, was that I hadn't met his parents. They didn't seem to be anywhere. I couldn't help but be curious, and so I decided to ask him why. David looked away from me.
They're out right now. A party.
Oh, I get it. Cool. I didn't get it, but I figured he had his own reasons. Maybe his parents were drunk and he didn't want to talk about it. We both got ready for bed and eventually fell asleep, or at least I did. I'm not sure if he ever did. I woke up in the middle of the night, a weird feeling making me stir from my dreams. I didn't know what made me wake up, but when I cracked my eyes open, I saw David standing there with a pipe raised above his head and an unsettling glint in his eyes. He was just standing there, grinning wider and wider as he watched me. I laid motionless, my breath stuck in my throat, terrified at what he was going to do next. What made it even worse was his appearance. He might have been short and slightly chubby, yeah, but his broad arms and hands were raised sky high with the pipe. His eyes had wrinkles on wrinkles beneath them, and his small mouth quivered with excitement. His fat folds jiggled beneath his clothes as he shifted slightly. After what felt like an eternity, he finally dropped the pipe and began to draw something on a drawing board I hadn't noticed before. I could only make out some of the details in the low light, but it looked like he was drawing a man and a woman, with both of them looking not so alive at the moment. Suddenly, however, he began drawing a third character. This was when I realized exactly what he was drawing. The third character stood above the other two, holding what was clearly a pipe. He was drawing a picture of himself and what he had done to his parents. My heart was racing, and the room started to spin as I tried to think of a way out of this situation. I was about to move when I realized he had noticed as well. He quickly wiped the drawing board off and turned toward me again, grabbing his pipe. I inched my fingers toward my phone, but he began to speak.
You're not going to be able to call your parents, David. I'll do to them what I did to mine.
What do you mean? Why are you awake? I tried to play innocent, but he wasn't buying it.
I saw you stirring while I drew my picture. You saw it, didn't you?
The fear crept up my spine. He lunged forward and grabbed my arm, dragging me away from the door. He dropped me to the ground, then quickly bolted out the door, locking it behind him. I heard him mumble something about making this quick as he scrambled to lock the windows as well. That's when it hit me. He was going to off me. He wanted me gone, just like his parents. I started to panic, but I also knew this was my only chance. I had to make it out alive. I ran to the window. I could hear myself struggling to find something outside, presumably something to silence me with, but I was already pushing the window open. I heard it creak and crack as it moved, but I pushed through and started to climb out. Once outside, I ran as fast as I could. The streets were empty, save for the occasional car or two. I heard a scream of anger behind me, and I turned around, watching as he ran from the house, his pipe held high. But I didn't stop running. I kept running until I reached the safety of my parents' house. The police came soon after I made it home. They said they found evidence that David had been living on his own since his parents had gone missing, but there was no proof that he had gotten rid of them. That's when I realized how lucky I had been to escape from David's house alive. The worst part about this, though, is that because the police couldn't find any evidence, he's not going to jail. Luckily for me, he'll have to transfer since he'll be sent to an adoption agency. What's creeping me out, however, is that on the day he left, someone slid a letter into my parents' mailbox with a note scribbled on it.
If you want to meet my parents so badly, I can help.
It freaks me out to think that sometime in the future, he might just escape the adoption agency and come back here for revenge.
Every 4th of July, Uncle Sam visited our house. Waking up in the morning, I would find my dad standing near the table, lecturing me on how to behave.
Now remember, I don't want you talking to him unless I'm around. You hear? Yes, Dad. I'm serious. Now tuck in your shirt. He's here.
The front door swung open and there stood Uncle Sam, dressed unusually.
Happy 4th of July!
He was really proud to be an American, so every 4th of July he would wear a suit designed like the national flag. He would match that with his tall hat, which looked even more bizarre.
Now,
Uncle Tommy said, turning to me and lowering himself to a knee.
Where's my hug at? Been a while since I saw you last.
I took a couple of steps toward him and leaned in for a hug. His tight embrace made me uncomfortable, and I let out a light whimper.
Why do you always see you wearing full sleeves?
He asked, tugging at my long sleeves.
Well, they're my dad's favorite.
Oh, you poor thing.
He then turned towards my dad and said,
Let the boy have some fun, Jack. Don't you remember how much fun you used to have when you were his age?
I saw my dad's face turn red. He yelled at me.
Don't you have some chores to finish up?
I knew that was my cue to leave, so I shuffled off to my room. Slowly, the sun set and the house was set up with 4th of July decorations. I came out of my room when I saw my aunt's car pull up outside. A firecracker lit up the sky as I saw my cousins rushing into the house. We three hugged each other and were so excited. Uncle Sam was watching us with a creepy smile.
You boys are so cute together. I wish I could just eat you all up.
Boys, go play upstairs. We will call you when it's time.
We all fled the scene hearing our aunt's voice. Every time Uncle Sam came, my dad and aunt's behavior just changed. I don't even get why they even invited him if they hate Uncle Sam so much. But on that 4th of July, things took a dark turn. I was playing a video game with my cousin Noah and Devin when Noah said,
Mom saved me from his hug today. Hell yeah, dude. What about you? I bet he gave you tons of hugs, huh? Shut up.
They went quiet, but one thing was clear. We too hated Uncle Sam. When we went down for dinner, we were shocked. Uncle Sam was sitting on the couch with a big frown like he had been scolded by his mom. My dad was packing his bag. My mom and aunt were sitting at the dinner table.
What's wrong, guys?
Nothing. Uncle Sam's got an emergency and he'll be leaving soon, right after dinner.
I could sense tension, but too many questions would get me in trouble, so I remained quiet. Anyways, we were happy that our weird uncle was soon leaving.
Come! Let's eat dinner!
Our aunt called us and we listened. Uncle Sam got up and stormed into the basement. 5 minutes later, he came out with his coat and walking stick. He snatched his suitcase from Dad and spoke to him in a grunting voice.
You shouldn't have crossed me, Jack. You have to pay a big price for this one.
My dad opened the door for him and slammed it hard once he left. He came to sit with us and took a deep breath.
Finally, we can have dinner in peace.
Rest of the night, things got better. They were all cheering and laughing again. Uncle Sam's exit gave us all a peculiar relief. My cousins slept in my room. I was on the bed and they brought their sleeping bags. I don't recall what time it was, but I heard a creak. I opened my eyes and saw my bedroom door slowly opening.
Mom? Is that you?
I got up on the bed, rubbing my sleepy eyes.
Mom?
No answer came. I called again. This time, I saw a head beginning to come out from the gap in the door.
Who is that?
Now there stood a tall man in my room. His eyes glowed in the dark. His sharp white teeth glazed, touching the moonlight. It came out from the dark shadows and said in a groggy voice,
Can I have one last hug, Andrew?
He didn't wait for me to reply and came running at me full speed. My scream woke everyone up and my cousins turned on the light. Once they saw Uncle Sam standing near my bed, they got scared too. Uncle Sam turned to leave knowing that he had messed up this time, but my dad blocked his way. He dragged Uncle Sam out of my room and my aunt locked the door from the outside.
Just stay in and don't scream. Be cool, boys. We're only going to call the cops.
After that night, we never saw Uncle Sam again. The cops never came to our house asking anything about him. Years later, my dad died. My cousin and I met at his funeral. My aunt has died too by then. Devin then gave me a key saying my aunt wore this like a pendant till the day she died. They have checked everything and the key opens nothing in their house. So that's when I noticed my dad's initials on the key, and it hit me. Dad had a safe in his office. The key to the safe looked exactly like this one, but he said he had lost it and we never got to open that safe. Taking my cousin to my dad's old office, I twisted the key into the safe and it opened with a rusty click. As we opened the door of the safe, our blood froze. There were Uncle Sam's clothes, shoes, and hat wrapped up in plastic. Noah unfolded the clothes to check and ended up dropping them in fear. There were spritz of red dots all over Uncle Sam's belongings.
Do you think our parents...
Devin didn't let him finish and said,
"Let's burn these clothes. Now, move!"
We burnt them in our backyard. I don't know what happened to Uncle Sam and I don't want to know, but I sure believe parents can go to any extent to protect their children. It happened 2 years ago. I went on a business trip to a country in the Middle East. I stayed at a prestigious hotel for 4 days during my time there. When I was finally ready to head back to the US, I booked a flight with a 6 p.m. departure time. That evening, I remember checking out of the hotel. I walked out of the hotel with my luggage in one hand and my cell phone in the other. I was on a call with my boss while I waited for a cab to take me to the airport. I didn't have to wait for long though. In a matter of minutes, a dingy cab rolled by. Its tires were shot, its windshield was cracked, and a trail of black smoke sputtered from its exhaust pipe. The cab driver didn't look any better. He was a short man with a pale, puffy face and bulging eye bags. A deep scar ran across his speckled face, and 3 of the fingers on his left hand were missing. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have gotten into the cab, even at gunpoint, but I was so distracted by my call, I hardly noticed it until it was too late.
"Take me to the airport,"
I said to him as I sat in the back seat.
"We will arrive at the airport in 5 minutes,"
the man grunted. While yammering over the phone, I carelessly placed my passport on the armrest. Secretly, the cab driver pilfered it and slipped it into his pocket.
"We are here,"
he said as we arrived at the airport. Without saying another word, I flung him a $10 bill and made my way towards the airport entrance.
"Have a nice flight."
He cut me a worrying smile as I walked off. When I entered the airport, I briskly went to the checking area, but when the airport staff requested my passport, I didn't have it. I turned my luggage inside out and almost stripped to my boxer shorts, searching for it, but it was nowhere to be found.
Gosh darn it, where did I drop that thing?
I raced outside and checked for the cab that brought me, but it was long gone. The plane was boarding, and I still hadn't checked in yet. I felt like I was losing my mind.
You don't understand, I have to be on that flight.
I begged and pleaded, but it was no use. The plane left without me. The only way to fix the problem was to go to the American Embassy, and it was already 8 p.m. Even at that, a new passport would take weeks to prepare. Embarrassed and exhausted, I left the airport and went outside to hail another taxi. Then, lo and behold, the cab from earlier was right there, waiting for me.
"My friend, what happened? You did not travel again?"
He asked, pretending to care.
No, it's silly, but I lost my passport. Did you happen to see it in your cab?
"I'm so sorry, my friend, but I did not. What will you do now?"
I don't know. Guess I'll return to the hotel and then apply for a new one tomorrow.
"Good idea. I tell you what, I pity you. I drive you back to hotel free of charge. What do you say?"
I'm not sure why, but his offer made me even more unsettled than I already was. But it was already late, and I was so tired. So I figured, what the heck? I joined him in the cab, and we began our trip to the hotel. Only we weren't heading towards the hotel. but a whole other direction entirely, to a place I've never been before. The cab driver drove us to the slums. It was a rough neighborhood with filthy streets, decrepit houses, and street urchins.
Hey, what's the big idea? Where the hell are you taking me? Don't worry, my friend. I know someone that can help you make a new passport. He's very fast. By tomorrow, you'll be ready to travel back to your country.
Something smelt really fishy. I knew it in my gut, but the thought of getting back home as quickly as possible sounded too good to ignore. I sat back and let him drive to a dark and mysterious compound. At the center of the compound was a creepy shed cobbled together with wood and corrugated zinc. The car stopped, and the driver got out.
Wait right here. I will be right back.
He walked into the shed. I sat there alone in the car, anxiously waiting for the man to come back out. Suddenly, I noticed something sticking out of the glove compartment. It was a blue booklet that looked suspiciously like an American passport. I was a little skittish about rummaging through his stuff, but I just had to know what it was. I opened the glove compartment and, to my shock, it was my passport. It had my name, picture, the whole caboodle.
What the heck is going on?
Suddenly, the cab driver walked out of the shed with two mean-looking men behind him. Each of them was carrying a weapon. The man had a long pipe wrench in his hand.
Oh, God!
Leaving my bag and phone behind, I immediately lunged out of the car and made a run for it.
He is escaping! After him!
The three men got into the car and raced after me. They caught up to me in seconds. They rammed the car into me, knocking me to the ground. I was concussed and bleeding, but they didn't stop there. They got down and rained kicks and blows on me from every direction. Then they popped the trunk open and tried to stuff me into it. I knew if they took me, my life would be over. So I screamed for help.
Help! Someone please help me!
I cried at the top of my voice. Luckily, a group of people nearby heard my voice, and a crowd started gathering.
Rats! More people are coming!
They dumped my body on the road and quickly drove off. I lost my bags, my phone, and my wallet. All I had left was my passport, which I clutched tightly in my hand. The next day, I reported the incident to the police, and despite all the evidence I gave them, they were not able to locate the cab driver. In the end, I'm just glad I got back home safe and sound. I haven't been brave enough to travel since then, and something tells me I probably never will. One time, I took a babysitting gig on Halloween night. It was a couple named Tillman who had a 7-year-old daughter, Pamela. When I reached their house, Mr. and Miss Tillman were ready to go out. Miss Tillman took me inside and pointed at the freezer.
There's plenty of food. Eat whatever you like. And there's extra cash on the kitchen desk to order pizza. Pam has gone to bed already, so you won't have anything to worry about.
A car horn honked outside, and she rushed to the door saying,
I'll just be 3 houses away. Also, you have my number. Have a nice time, Mrs. Tillman.
I watched her driving off in a car. I closed the door and punched the security code to lock the house. The house was massive, and with the Halloween decor, it felt spooky to be the only one awake. I walked to the kitchen. From the big kitchen window, I saw kids running outside. I opened the freezer and took a can of ginger ale. I returned to the living room and switched on the TV to watch a scary movie. Just then, my eyes noticed the half-open door of Miss Tillman's room. It almost gave me a heart attack. I could see 2 bright glowing fireballs glowing in that darkness. I would have screamed if the lightning didn't occur, illuminating the clown statue inside Miss Tillman's bedroom. I exhaled, then got up to go to the room. A storm was about to come. I could hear the dark clouds rumble. My hand searched the wall beside the doorway, and I turned on the lights.
What the hell?
It was the statue of a jester, the professional clown who used to perform in court play. It was the first time I had seen something like this. It had a pointy, oddly shaped head. His eyes were sharp and broad. His attire seemed funny, but only his smile wasn't amusing enough. There was something very wrong with his smile. I noticed a hat with a bell attached under the statue. It must have fallen from his head. I picked it up and put it back on his bald head. I looked closely into his eyes. They were looking behind me, so they were not precisely creating eye contact. Oh God, the doorbell scared me. Who could it be at this hour? I opened the door to see an empty porch. Slow rain had started by then, and the streets were deserted. Everyone had gone home. I checked around but saw no one. Thinking it was a prank, I went back in, locked the door, and suddenly noticed the room upstairs. The room door was wide open. That's where Pamela, Miss Tillman's 7-year-old daughter, sleeps. I tiptoed and peeked inside. Pam wasn't in her bed, which quickly gave me goosebumps.
Pam? This isn't funny. Are you hiding in here somewhere? Pam?
Sorry, it's Halloween.
Oh, you little demon. You gave me a heart attack.
I tucked her back into bed and climbed downstairs. I forgot to switch off the light in Miss Tillman's room. As I went to do that, I again noticed the clown statue. It made me very uncomfortable, so I grabbed the bedsheet and covered the creepy statue. I then switched off the light and closed the door. I came back from watching the TV when Miss Tillman called me.
Hi, I was wondering if you could stay for 2 more hours? My husband will drop you home once we get back. I'll pay you a little extra, Jess.
Sure, works for me. Oh, and Mrs. Tillman?
Yes?
I hope you don't mind. I covered the clown statue in your bedroom. It was freaking me out, so...
What? What statue? We don't have any clown statues, honey.
My phone slipped and fell to the ground. I heard it break into pieces, but I couldn't move. My legs felt numb. My body was shaking in fear. I slowly turned around, facing Miss Tillman's bedroom door. It was still closed. The heavy rainstorm was going on outside. I felt my heart racing because there was no way I was mistaken about this clown statue. I opened the door and switched on the lights. What I saw made my stomach drop. There was no statue in the bedroom, only the bedsheet lying curled up on the floor.
Looking for me, Jessica?
Following the spine-chilling voice, I turned to the closet on my right, and there he was, standing inside the closet. I could make out his shadowy appearance and his glowing eyes, but there was something new added to his costume. A baseball bat.
Oh my God!
I freaked out finally. All this time, what I assumed to be a lifeless statue was some creep dressed like a freaky Halloween clown. I rushed to the door and heard heavy footsteps behind me. I looked back and saw him walking towards me, laughing and swinging his bat.
Help! Help!
I kept crying and screaming as I rushed upstairs, but he grabbed me by my feet and pulled me down. My body scrubbed against the hard wooden stairs as I got dragged by this evil psycho. As I lay on the ground, watching him lift his baseball bat with a huge grin, my life flashed before my eyes.
See you in hell, Jess.
I heard Miss Tillman's voice and her loud knocking on the door.
Jess? Jess! Is everything all right? Open the door!
I was sobbing like a 9-year-old, thinking maybe he would swing the giant bat at me now. My brain would be scattered, and no one would know who did this. But he didn't. Instead, he gave me a death stare and said,
Done for the day, I guess. Happy Halloween.
He then ran to the kitchen. The sound of the window getting smashed echoed in the house, and I fainted. I woke up at the hospital the next day. Mr. and Miss Tillman reported to the cops and came to the hospital as well. I told them everything that I experienced. It's been 3 days now. There's no information on that guy who snooped inside the house and dressed as a clown. The cops got reports of 3 home invasions and 1 murder that same night. Was it all him? Or were there more like him? I don't know. I'm just happy the kid didn't encounter that freak, or she would have been traumatized for life. I love backpacking. It's my favorite hobby to calm down my nerves after a hectic week at work. Almost every weekend, I go on hiking or road trips, alone. I'm a bit of an introvert, which kind of backfired on me this one time. After a stressful project, I took a 5-day-long holiday to travel and live in nature. I always keep a bag ready to go camping. I took enough ready to eat food and water to get by. The plan was simple. I drive by the high road surrounded by woods and camp inside it for a night's rest. It was my first time doing things like that, so I never saw it coming. The first 3 days went smoothly. I woke up to amazing sunrises, had hot coffee, and prepared breakfast. And then, I headed for the next stop. On the 4th day, I left the last town on the highway and got onto this dirt road leading to the deep forest. I prepped my car before that and refilled everything. This time, I was going to camp by a lake and stay there for 2 days, totally away from people. I was buying drinks from the gas station when the owner asked,
"Going hiking, huh?"
Yeah, man.
"Are you gonna spend the night in the forest?"
Yeah. Why?
The man's face changed. He chinned down his face and said in a low voice,
"Has no one ever told you about Mary-Am?"
I frowned at hearing this. The owner went on.
"Mary-Am was a beautiful maid in a bid to escape her owner. One night, she ran away and ended up in those woods. She wandered into an unknown place and was raped by thugs, who later murdered her."
Come on, dude, you're just trying to scare me. Well, it won't work for me.
I paid for him and left him in my car. As I drove away, the man kept muttering how I shouldn't be staying in those woods at night. I was halfway put down when the sky rumbled. Dark clouds immediately covered the daylight, and the rain started pouring, but I couldn't stop, so I kept driving at a minimal speed. I feared that going at high speed might turn the car over if it started to storm, hence where I was supposed to reach by afternoon. I arrived after sundown. It was a shallow creek. The banks were filled with uneven grass and wildflowers, creating a mystic smell.
At last!
The moonlight was shining on the stream. I collected some wood and lit a fire to warm myself. After feeling all charged, I chugged drinks and made dinner. I heard a waterfall at the end of this creek, and I wanted to wake up early to visit it the following day. I made fried eggs, bacon, and some ramen noodles. I was starving after the annoying drive. By 8:30, I was inside my tent reading a book. I could hear the splash of water on the riverbank, the chirping of crickets, and the crackling sound of wood burning in the fire. After 5 seconds, another sound added to that ambience, a sound of someone swimming in that creek. I could hear the clapping of waves echoing into the woods. I unzipped the tent and peeked out from the corner. The banks were filled with fog. A cloud of smoke was covering the creek like a gray wool blanket. Just then, I saw a head floating on the water. I flashed my light, and it quickly went underwater. A weird feeling increased my heartbeat. Was that a person? I came out on the banks and flashed my light to look around. I couldn't see anything. I turned around and returned to my tent when I heard a sound in the water. I flashed my light back at the water. It flickered twice and then stopped working.
Damn it!
I hit the torch with my fist, but it was done for. That's when the whistling started. High-pitched yet slow whistles coming from the creek. I stood on the foggy riverbank illuminated by the pale moonlight. My skin crawled. Suddenly, I began feeling threatened by this unknown entity.
Who's there? Hello? If you're trying to scare me or something!
I could see a movement in the water. Something was swimming toward the bank, right in my direction. It was coming at full speed, moving the water rapidly. When it reached the bank, I fell, screaming.
Who is that? What do you want?
Suddenly, clouds of fog covered everything in front of me. All the sounds stopped. An uncomfortable silence remained. And then I saw a girl standing amidst the thick fog. I have never seen a face like that. Her eyes were like little fireflies glowing in those hollow black sockets. Her skinny, pale hands hung beside her body. She stared into my soul for a few seconds and then suddenly closed her eyes. My body was numb in fear, but somehow I gathered the courage. I hit the flashlight one more time, and it finally turned on. But this time, she wasn't there. Only the thick fog crowded in front of my eyes. With trembling hands, I kept looking into the mist.
Golly!
I wasn't ready for this shock, so I fell on the muddy banks. The girl was now standing before me, floating 4 feet above the ground. Her mouth opened wide, and so did her eyes. Then I heard a buzzing sound. As the sound grew louder, thousands of flies came out of her eyes, of her mouth. It was as if she was vomiting them alive. The flies swarmed all over me, and I started running like a mad dog. All I remember after that was grabbing my stuff and hopping into my car. I looked at the Moonlight Creek one last time. And she was dancing on the water, laughing like a ghost. Her long hair dangled in the cold wind as she moved in circles, stretching her arms wide to the sky. Her chuckles echoed into the night. A sick joy could be sensed in her lunatic dance moves. It was terrifying to witness. I left the place that night. I drove until I reached the same gas station. I spent the night there. The next morning, I told the owner everything I saw. The owner said Miriam's body was found on the banks of the creek one morning. Her face was distorted with fear. A swarm of flies moved in circles around her hollow jaw that was opened in a silent scream. Her killers were never caught. People say she still haunts the woods at night.
When I was a sophomore in college, I was friends with this guy named Steven that wanted to start a popular YouTube channel. During our freshman year, we were dorm mates, and he would talk about his channel all the time, trying to get me to give him input on video ideas. I always thought he was pretty uncreative, but he did have a somewhat entertaining personality. Of course, I was a big part of his first handful of videos. However, after we moved in with different people the next year, I stopped being in his videos and didn't hang out with him as much. That was until he hit me up to do a McDonald's mukbang video, because none of his other roommates wanted to do it, even though he was offering to pay for all the food. Honestly, I always thought the concept was dumb, but as a broke college student, I found it difficult to say no to a day's worth of free food, so I agreed. The next Saturday, we met up at his dorm. As soon as I saw Steven for the first time in months, I was shocked to see that he had dressed up as Ronald McDonald. Clearly, this was for a visual gag, but he did a terrible job on the costume. He looked like a dollar store nightmare version of the real Ronald McDonald, or like a roadside junkie who robbed a party city and went crazy with a paintbrush. To be fair, it made me burst out laughing immediately, which made us both more hopeful that it would be a successful video. We put together his filming set so we could start as soon as we got back. Then we got into his car and drove to the nearest McDonald's. I've always felt bad whenever I made life more difficult for people working in the fast food industry. I could hear the deep sadness and the intense loathing in the voice of the drive-thru worker when Steven ordered 2 of everything on the menu. Of course, it almost took an hour for them to complete our entire order, during which time Steven vlogs some of the behind-the-scenes action. Once we finally got our obscene amount of food, we drove straight back to the dorm and covered the entire folding table with a ridiculous display of McDonald's. Then we sat down and started filming and got to it. We both fasted all day and skipped dinner the night before, so we would be super hungry whenever we got to the mukbanging, which meant we started out eating very quickly. I've never been a big fan of McDonald's, but those first 3 or 4 burgers were delicious. After about 1,000 calories, though, I started to slow down. On the other hand, I don't know what Steven was on, but he was like a bottomless pit. He wasn't slowing down for anything. He kept egging me on to keep going.
What are you slowing down for, bro? Go big or go home!
It's so much food, man. We barely made a dent.
Exactly. That's why we can't quit now. We haven't even gone through the burgers.
If I eat one more burger right now, I'm never gonna eat another burger in my life.
Fine, you big baby. I'll finish the burgers. You get started on the nuggets.
Alright. By then, the nuggets were cold and tasted like cardboard. The only thing that made them edible was dipping them in an excess amount of sauce. I ate 10 nuggets and then started munching on fries because I couldn't stomach anything else. Before long, I was starting to feel physically ill. I put my head on the table just for Steven to start flipping out on me.
Hey, you can't sleep. Look at all this food that's left. Why are you quitting on me, man? Go big or go home.
I can't, man. I just can't. I think I'm gonna throw up.
Only if you stop. You gotta keep stacking food on top to push down the stuff on the bottom.
I don't think that's how it works, man.
Stop! Stephen McDonald knows best. Isn't that right, folks? Look at this quitter. Everyone boo the quitter.
Who are you talking to, bro?
The audience, duh!
Oh man. I think I'm gonna be sick. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Oh no, you don't!
I tried to get up so I could go throw up in the toilet, but Steven jumped up and grabbed me.
You're not going anywhere! Keep eating!
Then he started shoving McChickens into my mouth, and out of everything on the McDonald's menu, I've always hated McChickens the most. There's just so much mayo and soggy lettuce. It's disgusting.
Eat it! Go big or go home!
I tried to get Steven off of me, but it felt like the blood in my veins was turning into concrete. I didn't even have time to swallow one McChicken before he shoved the next one into my mouth. I couldn't even breathe. Once I started choking and gagging, it was over. A whole bunch of my stomach contents came up and it couldn't get past the blockage in my throat, so it all came out my nose. Of course, Steven thought that this was hilarious footage. He finally let go of me and I fell to the floor as he went to grab the camera for some close-up shots of my embarrassing condition.
Look at this loser. You see, folks? This is what happens when you disappoint the Stephen McDonald.
What's wrong with you, man? You're sick.
What's that? I can't hear you over the sound of you failing the mukbang challenge.
Steven even started throwing food at me and making sounds like How To Basic. That's when I knew I had to get out of there. As soon as I cleared my airways enough to breathe, I started crawling for the door. Steven filmed me, laughing like a sicko the whole time. I finally got to my feet and ran out the door. I stumbled home, looking like a complete mess. Obviously, I never associated with Steven again, and I reported his video, and it got taken down.
It happened 3 years ago. My best friend Ashley and I attended a music school during the summer. We met this strange, skinny-looking girl named Elena. She was very close to Ashley, so she invited the two of us over to her place for a sleepover. I still remember when her dad, Mr. Van Buiten, came to pick us up from school. He was an unusually hideous-looking man. His head was balding and swollen, his legs short and stubby. His pale skin was quite hairy, and he had warts all over his face and body. Just one look at him made me want to gouge my eyes out. I felt uneasy as he drove. I would often catch glimpses of his small beady eyes gawking at me through the rearview mirror. He also made these heavy breathing noises, like he was gasping for breath. Things became even more unsettling when he started saying creepy things like,
"You girls smell very nice. I love teenage girls. I wish I could have 100 more daughters like Elena."
Finally, when we got to Elena's house, we went into her room and changed into our pajamas. We played Truth or Dare, pillow fights, and other fun sleepover games. Admittedly, I was having a blast, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I often noticed her dad's beady eyes in the dark as he peered at us through the space in her bedroom door. After a while, Elena left the room to get us both some soda to drink. I tried confiding in Ashley.
Hey, I'm a little uncomfortable. I think something's wrong with Elena's dad. I think he's been watching us.
Yeah, I noticed that too. But it's just one night. We'll leave first thing tomorrow morning.
Her words calmed me somewhat, but little did I know things were about to get worse. Much worse.
I'm back with the soda.
Elena brought us a soda bottle each. It was a strange green-colored drink that I had literally never heard of before. I also noticed that the seals of the bottle caps had been tampered with.
Finally! I'm so thirsty.
Ashley gulped down the whole bottle in a heartbeat. I, on the other hand, left mine for later.
I gotta go to the bathroom. Sure, there's one just down the hall.
I made my way toward the bathroom. The hallway was very dark and gloomy. Aside from the eerie ticking noise of the old grandfather clock downstairs, everywhere was silent. Suddenly, I heard some muttering sounds and muffled crying coming from the ceiling. My blood froze, and my ears became hot as I tried to trace the source of the sound. It seemed to be coming from the attic. I inched closer to the attic door overhead. It had a long cord attached to it. For a moment, my paranoid mind entertained the thought of pulling the cord and opening the door to the attic. Suddenly, Elena's dad appeared out of nowhere.
Susan.
His sinister, throaty voice made my skin crawl. I could feel the hair on the back of my neck stand on end.
Good evening, Mr. Van Buren. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
I stuttered.
What's the matter, Susan? Why aren't you with the others?
Oh, I was looking for the bathroom, but I got a little lost.
Oh, it's just down the hall. Let me know if you need any help getting there.
Thank you, Mr. Van Buren. No, I will be fine.
I walked away from him as quickly as I could. He, on the other hand, didn't move an inch. He just stood there, staring creepily as I walked into the bathroom. Luckily, he was gone by the time I was done. I walked back to the room, and we watched a movie together. After that, we all went to sleep. I drifted off on a roll-up mattress, but I couldn't get much sleep because of how spooked out I was. Suddenly, I heard the thud of heavy footsteps close by, followed by bursts of heavy breathing. It sounded so close. I could almost feel it on my skin. I opened my eyes, and the footsteps quickly hurried away. Elena was no longer in the room, and Ashley was fast asleep.
Ashley, wake up!
I pushed and nudged, but she didn't budge. She was so knocked out that an explosion could go off, and she wouldn't even notice. Just then, I spotted red flickers of light beeping from within Elena's wardrobe. I opened the wardrobe, and to my shock, I found a portable hidden camera in there. It was recording everything that was going on in the room.
What the hell is going on?
Before I could pry any further, I heard sobs and whispers again. It was coming from the attic, but now it was louder than before. Emboldened, I went straight for the attic door and pulled down the stairs. Slowly, I walked up the attic. The stairs creaked with every step I took. I was petrified by what I found up there. Young girls, each one about my age, all dressed in white and tied up. There were at least 6 of them. Each was so bony and lanky that they probably hadn't eaten in days.
Oh God! What is this?
They begged me to free them. Some even asked me to take their lives. Just then, Mr. Van Buren emerged from the shadows.
Ah, Susan. I see you're eager to join the others. No worries. I asked Elena to help me bring a white dress that'll fit you like a fiddle.
In an instant, I slipped past him and tumbled down the attic stairs. I ran back into the room and tried to wake Ashley up.
Ashley, wake up! Wake the hell up!
I shoved and pushed, but no dice.
Try all you want. She's not going anywhere, and neither are you.
He inched towards me. Desperate, I opened the bedroom window and jumped out to the yard below, limping and crying. I ran as fast as I could until I was able to hitch a ride to my house. When I got home, I told my dad all that happened. The next day, we went back to the house with the police but found no one there. Ashley was gone too. All we found were creepy recordings of all the girls who had come to the house for sleepovers. It's been 3 years since then, and there's still been no sign of Ashley. I'm just glad I was able to escape that madhouse, but I'm so deeply saddened that my friend wasn't so lucky.
I drove down the road while Ryan sat in the passenger seat, making sure that all our cameras were charged and our phones were connected to the internet. We had heard of this new mukbang YouTuber, Nick, and I'd shot him a message a few weeks back asking to collab. He agreed, and that's where we were headed now. Ryan and I were a YouTube duo that did a mix of vlogging, sketch comedy, and challenges. This would be our first mukbang episode. When we arrived at the address Nick had given us, we gave each other weird looks. His house didn't seem very intriguing. It was eerily quiet and the lights were all off. We turned on our cameras just in case and proceeded cautiously. There was no car parked in front, but I looked down at my phone and reread the message Nick had sent me just 10 minutes before.
Don't worry about knocking. Just come in, I'll be in the kitchen.
We opened the door and stepped inside. The house was empty except for a few food containers and bottles scattered everywhere. We exchanged puzzled glances, but Ryan shrugged his shoulders and we proceeded deeper into the house. The darkness was strange and bizarre, but we proceeded anyway. I nodded to Ryan and he grabbed one of our cameras from his bag and began to roll. Maybe Nick had some strange idea he wanted to try out. We rounded the corner and suddenly heard a noise coming from the kitchen. We cautiously walked closer, our hearts pounding as we entered. There was no one in sight. The lights were still off, but I noticed a figure sitting at the table in the dim light. It was Nick. He just sat there, motionless. We stepped closer, and that's when he finally let out a loud scream and lunged at us with rage.
What the heck? Nick, it's Jared! Hey, man!
I stumbled out of the way before I could finish my sentence, my heart thumping as he swung his massive fist at me. His body was huge and took up a lot of the room. His eyes were bloodshot and cloudy. In the dim light, he seemed almost monstrous, his folds swaying with his body as he swung toward me, each of his hands the size of my head, his atrocious hair scraggly and dark in the fading light.
Jared, man, what's going on? Let's get out of here.
I dodged past the hulking figure again as he hurled dishes and food at us. We sprinted out of the kitchen across the hall and out of the house as fast as we could. I was terrified as I ran, quickly realizing I had forgotten where the exit was. Luckily, I soon saw the door and we ran for it. As soon as we were outside, I looked back to see the massive figure of Nick chasing us down. His thudding footsteps got louder, and I leaped into the truck, urging Ryan to follow.
Get in! Get in!
As soon as Ryan had stumbled into the passenger seat, I turned the key and revved the engine, reversing out of the driveway. As I did, however, I saw the garage door of the house open. Nick leaped into a van that was parked inside, and he sped out of the garage, chasing after us. I drove as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. As we approached a red light, I got ready to swerve around it, but a large semi was heading toward the intersection.
He's gaining on us, bro! Come on, what are you doing?
With a sickening thud and a lurch, I felt his van collide with our truck. I revved the engine again, speeding through the intersection as soon as the semi had passed.
We gotta get to the police station, man. It should just be down the road a bit.
With a final burst of energy, I drove as fast as I could down the street. We were almost there when suddenly I heard Ryan curse and I realized the van was no longer behind us. Nick had pulled his van up side by side with our vehicle and he swerved the wheel, his eyes wild as he leaned out of the window and yelled something incomprehensible. As his vehicle collided with ours, I swerved off the road, my tires crunching on the gravel. When I looked back, I saw him leap from his van and run towards our car.
Lock the doors, man!
I locked the doors as Ryan had said, and just in time. In an instant, the massive man was against the windows, smashing his fists at the glass and making it crack. But then suddenly, his eyes went blank and he stopped pounding on the window. He just stood there, his body limp and his eyes staring off into space. We both sat there for a few moments in stunned silence before I slowly opened the door. When I approached him, I noticed that he was trembling and muttering something to himself. It looked like he was having some sort of episode. I didn't hesitate. I wasn't sure if he was pretending or not, so I called the police anyway. Hello? 911? I need help. I explained what had happened, and soon a police car was on the way. I stayed with Nick until the police arrived. He seemed to have calmed down, but he just kept repeating the same thing over and over. I couldn't make it out, but it almost seemed apologetic. As it turns out, it wasn't his fault. Apparently, he had been suffering from paranoid schizophrenia disorder and had never received treatment. A few days later, I heard that Nick was doing better. He was undergoing treatment, and he seemed to be doing a good job of managing his condition. Ryan and I were happy to hear the news, but I'll be honest, I'm not going to collaborate with him again.
Why can't you just leave me alone? How many times am I going to have to block him before he gets the message? You gotta be kidding me. Again? Oh, thank God. Hey, Ronnie. Oh, Maya! You poor thing. Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. What's going on? What's going on? Are you serious? Haven't you heard the news with Spencer? Ronnie, don't tell me you called just to tell me about what Spencer's doing. I do not care, okay? I don't want to hear about it. But this is big news. It's serious. Like really, really serious. It's not big news. I dumped Spencer, and he's throwing himself a pity party. Big deal. He's the only one making it out to be big news. No, it's not like that. Won't you just listen? You never told me you were dating a crazy person all these years. Won't you listen to me? I don't want to hear about it. I was trying to tell all of you for years, but everybody believes Spencer over me. So, sorry if I have to tell you that it's too late for you to pretend to be on my side. Oh, come on! I'm trying to help you. Look, it all started when Spencer showed up to this party last night. Everybody was there. Well, everybody except you and Spencer. But then Spencer showed. And let me tell you, when I say he was messed up, I mean he was messed up. Like messed up. Like, I've never seen anyone like that before. It was like... Wow, some friends I've got. Huh. The power's out. Jeez, I guess this breakup really is cursed. Looks like I'm down to just battery power now. Everything has to happen all at once, doesn't it? Must be the neighbor asking if my power's out too. No! Why is he here? Why can't he just leave me alone?
Maya! I know you're in there! Stop hiding from me and let me in! I just want to talk! I swear! If you just come to the door, that's all we'll do, is talk!
Spencer, just go away! Please! All I want you to do is to leave me alone! Why is that so hard?
Because I love you, Maya! I'm crazy for you! I will do whatever it takes to get you back! Whatever it takes!
It's not going to work! Just leave before I call the cops!
You'll regret that. I'll make you regret it. Just listen to me.
Come on. Pick up, Ronnie. Pick up!
Oh, so now you want to talk to me, huh?
Shh! Forget about earlier. Spencer's at my house.
Are you serious? Right now?
Yes, right now.
All right, babe. Hang tight. I'll be there with some backup. Jason! Get your keys and your brass knuckles!
Please, hurry, Ronnie. Oh no. Where did he go?
Have you ever met someone on a dating app? I know that my friends have met a lot of people that way. Some of them are even in relationships now. But unfortunately, my experience was totally different. I had a few dates with other guys, but even though there were some that could be considered acceptable, most of them were pretty boring. Most of the people I dated were either completely silent while we ate or couldn't stop talking about themselves. Needless to say, there was never a second date with any of them. Anyway, all these terrible dates are nothing compared to my worst date. The date I went on with a psycho, a stalker, and a person who, if I let him, could have done me a lot of harm. It all started on Happen. I normally used several dating apps, but this was my favorite, as it connected me with people I had crossed paths with. The guy I was talking to called himself Alex. He was really nice, and from what he told me, he was as passionate about movies as I was. Despite being nice, I must admit that I was surprised at how insistent he was. He was adamant about meeting at his house to watch a movie that same night. Normally, I would have said no, but earlier that day, another guy had canceled on me, and I must admit that I was still a little angry about it. For some reason, I agreed. But before I went to his house, which was in an apartment building downtown, I told my whole family where Alex lived. When we finally met, I felt that I had made a good decision. Alex was exceedingly nice. He seemed very happy to see me, which seemed strange to me, but he was probably just nervous. His apartment wasn't very big, but that was the price of living alone at such a young age. We put on the movie we had talked about before we met, and at that moment, the nightmares began. It wasn't more than 5 minutes into the movie that I turned my head and noticed Alex staring at me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, that I had just caught him watching me and that he must really like me a lot, but that wasn't the case. Looking at him out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that Alex kept staring at me. At that moment, I realized how huge his eyes were, but it was Alex's obsessive stare that really made him as creepy as he was. I started to feel very uncomfortable. Was it my imagination, or was he not blinking? Was that even possible?
Hey, are you even watching the movie? Your focus seems to be elsewhere.
Yes, of course I'm watching it. Even after I called him out, his gaze never left me. I could bring it up again, but honestly, I was pretty scared. I just wanted to leave as soon as possible. I let the movie go on, and during that hour and a half, he never took his eyes off me. Alex saw absolutely nothing of the movie, only me, and he didn't stop for a second. As soon as the movie was over, I told him that I had to go home, that my mother had a health problem and I had to take care of her constantly. I told him that we could meet another day and get something to eat. At first, he agreed and rushed to open the door for me, but he became more and more insistent that I stay. He kept telling me that he had a great time, that it had been the best date of his life, and that he wanted to see me again. I lied to him and agreed to a second date. Alex was still looking at me with his scary psycho face. There was no telling what he might do if I turned him down. I took a bus home, rejecting his constant offers to come to my house, and as soon as I got back, I threw myself on my bed and turned on my cell phone. When I logged into my WhatsApp, I saw more than 20 messages and 10 missed calls from Alex. The messages started out fine, but the longer I didn't respond to him, his messages became more violent and were accompanied by a frenzy of calls. Without answering him, I simply blocked him and started crying. Not only had that been a failed date, but this man was also totally crazy. A few hours later, my mother knocked on my bedroom door and woke me up. It was midnight and she was about to go to bed, but she couldn't find her cell phone, so she asked me to call her. As I called, I heard her cell phone, but it seemed to be quite far away. I followed the sound of the cell phone until I got to our patio, and the phone was on a small table. As soon as I grabbed the cell phone, it rang, and out of curiosity, I opened it. It was a number that my mom didn't have in her address book, but I recognized it. It was Alex's number. The message said to look at my mother's photo gallery. When I opened it, I saw the last 5 pictures taken. The first 2 were of my mother in the kitchen cooking dinner. The other 3 were of me, sleeping. When I saw this, I almost dropped my cell phone. Had he followed me home? How had he slipped away? Finally, I received another message. This one said, "You should go inside. It's too cold." I ran into the house and locked the door. I went upstairs and into my mother's room, locking us in and checked the corners to see if anyone was hiding. I called the police and begged them to come as soon as possible. The man might not just be spying on us from outside, but he could be anywhere. When the police arrived, they searched the house and found no one. I never saw Alex again, but recently, more than 2 months after the date, I received a message on my cell phone from an unknown number. The message said, "You shouldn't have blocked me." Not a day goes by that I don't live in fear because of that man. I haven't seen him since, but it was as if he was always around, behind a garbage can, in an alley, under my bed. I felt his presence everywhere. The police are not being much help either. At this point, I can only pray that Alex gets bored of me. Otherwise, I will have to live in fear forever. It was last Wednesday afternoon. I was at work handling a meeting. About half an hour into the meeting, my wife, Beatrice, called me. When I answered, she sounded like a mess. She was out of breath and yelling into the phone.
Jack! Jack!
Hello? What's going on?
There's a kid at the door who...
Calm down. I can't understand a word you're saying.
Who won't leave. She's scary looking and keeps knocking on the door. I told her to leave, but she won't.
Don't be ridiculous, Beatrice. What's there to be scared of a kid? Is this one of your stupid pranks? 'Cause I'm...
No! Jack! It looks like something's wrong with her. She has two.
Beatrice? Beatrice! Hello? That was the last time I talked to my wife. When I got home, she was gone. I just shifted to a new house, trying my best to move on with life. The cops are still running the missing person investigation on my wife, but her scream on the phone makes me think that she isn't alive anymore. I was having dinner that night while watching TV when someone knocked on the door. I opened it and found no one. The night sky was cloudy. It was so dark outside that the street lights were having difficulty holding their ground. I looked around and shrugged my shoulders. I turned back to go in when I heard a voice.
Do you have candies?
I quickly turned around, but again there was no one there. Hello? Who's there? No answer came. It was only me standing on my porch in the middle of the night. Feeling a little creeped out, I went inside and locked the door. Nothing happened that night. The next day, I installed a doorbell camera to have tight security. At the same time that night, someone knocked on my door. I turned on the screen to first check who it was, and someone was standing in the middle of the street. It was a little girl standing across a lot. I could barely see her face. She seemed to be wearing a frock. I got close to the screen to glance at her when she rushed to the camera, giving me a heart attack. Ah!
Did I scare you, mister?
No. Are you lost, kid?
Ask him about the candies, Lily. My sister and I want some candies. Do you have any?
The two conjoined sisters kept staring into the camera like they were staring at my soul. They had thick metal braces on, and I'd never seen them before. Kids, do your parents know you're out?
Why don't you let us in? It's cold outside.
Now, as much as I wanted to help those kids, I couldn't shake off the weird vibes they were giving me. They looked like 6-year-olds, but the way they talked, it was just all very creepy. Do you need me to call the police?
No.
They can help you get back home.
We just want candies. Let us in. Let us in.
What the hell is wrong with you two? Go away!
You don't seem to be easily scared like your wife.
Just then, the last conversation with my wife Beatrice echoed in my ears.
No, Jack! It looks like something's wrong with her. She has two...
Two heads? Is that what she tried to say? Oh my god, do these kids do something to my wife?
How do you know my wife? Tell me! That's it!
I walked back to the couch, grabbed my phone, and started dialing 911. The sisters' faces suddenly changed. Their grins disappeared, and a creepy smile appeared.
Jack! There's a kid at the door who won't leave. She's scary looking and keeps knocking on the door. I told her to leave, but she won't.
The phone fell from my hand and crashed onto the floor. My body began to shake. The twins were talking in my wife's voice. I slowly turned back to the screen, drenched in sweat.
Jack, darling, won't you let me come in?
Ah! Go away! You're not my wife!
They started thumping their fists on my door. Even though they looked like kids, their punches felt like a car was hitting the door. The banging was so loud that I collapsed on the floor, covering my ears with my hands and screaming.
Go away! Go away!
Let us in! We want candies!
I don't have candies! Please! Please leave! Please!
The banging just got louder. I could see those girls' faces distorting on the doorbell camera. It was like watching a horror movie. I fainted gradually.
Who is it?
The morning light from the window illuminated the living room. I found myself lying on the wooden floor. I was passed out all night. The knocking appeared on the door again. I somehow managed to lift my sore body and throbbing head to reach for the door. Opening the door, I met with my family physician. Dr. Patterson, what are you doing here? Is it a bad time to talk to you, Jack? It's about your wife. Did you know Beatrice had a miscarriage last month? What? Yes, Jack. She was 2 months pregnant when she came to the chamber a week before her disappearance. She was having twins, but the baby... I don't know how to say this. She was having conjoined twins? Did she tell you about it? No, she never did. The 4th of July is a holiday that everyone enjoys. The kids are happy watching the fireworks and the parents celebrate their independence as Americans. Everyone enjoys this holiday except me. I'm terrified of fireworks. My fear goes back to when I was a kid. It all started when Cody, my neighbor, tried to play a prank on me on the 4th of July. The then teenager stole his father's fireworks, and when he lit the first one, instead of aiming it at the sky, he aimed it at my face. His father saw it and ran to stop him, but it was too late. After that day, my life was ruined forever. Not only did I acquire an intense phobia of fireworks, but I also have scars that will stay with me for the rest of my life. But believe it or not, there was a night even worse than that. The night I almost lost much more than my face. It was the 4th of July. I had just turned 18 and my parents had gone to celebrate the 4th of July with the rest of the family, but I decided to stay because I didn't want my fear of pyrotechnics to ruin anyone's night. My parents wanted to stay with me, but I convinced them to go. I closed all the doors and windows and put on a movie. I was going to enjoy the night in my own way. I sat down on the couch and began to relax, almost falling asleep, when suddenly a strange noise caught my attention. As soon as I turned around to see where it was coming from, the noise culminated into a huge explosion. I fell to the floor crying and shaking. The explosion made me remember what the sound symbolized. That was a firecracker. Stunned, I looked up and saw a strange silhouette hiding in the kitchen. Was it a child playing a joke on me? I tried to pull myself together and ran to the kitchen, but there was no one there. The kitchen was an enclosed space. The only place to hide was under the tablecloth. Angry, I stomped over with determination and violently pulled the tablecloth off. Under the tablecloth, there was no child. It was a man's face, but to tell the truth, I didn't get to see it. The only thing I could see at that moment was the firecracker he was pointing at my face, lit. I walked backward and a stumble made me fall. That stumble surely saved me from what was about to happen, as the firecracker flew right past my face and hit my kitchen, bouncing and exploding all over the place. Stunned, I watched as the person in front of me stood up and was shocked. His face, if you could call it that, was full of roughly healed burn wounds. His eyes seemed to protrude, straining out of their sockets. But what struck me the most was that he didn't have a single strand of facial hair.
Who are you? What do you want from me? Don't you recognize me? I'm Cody, your old neighbor.
I was speechless. This man was Cody, the person who burned my face. Since his father threw him out of the house that day, I never knew what happened to him. I heard he was in jail, but I didn't know the details. Cody? What are you doing here?
You see, every 4th of July I think of you. How my life got better because of you. Because I was lost. But now I found my purpose. You see, I discovered that I love explosions, fire, pyrotechnics, and I recently found out that you're afraid of them. As a reward for opening my eyes, I'll take away your fear of pyrotechnics. You're crazy!
I ran as fast as I could and hid in my bedroom closet. I could hear Cody approaching. His footsteps slowly pounded the wooden stairs of my house. They were getting closer and closer, step by step. Those noises reached my room. I closed my eyes as tight as I could and stopped breathing. I muffled any sign that I was trapped within a few feet of him. With any luck, he would leave and look for me in the bathroom. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped and a terrifying silence took over the room. I couldn't see what was going on outside, but I knew he was there. What was he doing? Why had he stopped? I heard a match flare to life in his hand, and that's when I realized why he had stopped. I covered my mouth and my ears. I knew what was about to happen. The explosions weren't long in coming. This was an explosive firecracker, and not in the shape of a flare, and my whole room shook from the explosion, the force echoing off the walls at a deafening volume. While this was happening, I could only cry. I watched through the holes in the closet as the curtain in my room caught fire and spread to my bed next to it. I wanted to run, to escape from the place right then, but I couldn't. When the blasting sound faded, I heard Cody's footsteps leave the room. I took a deep breath. I was safe. I opened my eyes calmly and calculated my escape route. The place was still on fire. But suddenly, I saw something peeking out of the closet door. It was a firecracker. He knew I was in here. I threw myself down the closet in terror as the firecracker exploded and burned my clothes. The heat in my room was getting hotter and hotter, and as I lay on the floor crying harder than ever, Cody looked at me with a huge smile on his face.
Please, don't kill me! Kill you? And why would I do that? Don't you want to take revenge on me? Not at all. I told you I'm grateful to you. Grateful that thanks to that night, I learned about my love for this. The intense heat, the lights, the smell of boiling wax, the sweat. This is living. Then let me go. And not help you learn to appreciate this blessing? What kind of good Samaritan would that make me? You will learn to love this, whether you want to or not.
At that last moment, an energy I didn't know I had flooded my body, and without hesitation, I jumped out the open window and fell into my backyard. The impact was very strong, and my arm dislocated. But I looked up at the fireworks in the sky and realized I was alive. As all the neighbors were coming to my rescue, I looked up, and there he was, Cody, watching me from the window with a huge smile on his face as my house burned to the ground. My parents arrived within minutes and took me to the hospital for some burns in my arm. We all thought Cody had died that day, but the fire department arrived quickly and found no body. Our neighbors had no idea this was happening. They hadn't heard from their son since he was kicked out and cried when they found out what he had become. After that, we moved. The next 4th of July, I spent with my family watching the fireworks. I was no longer afraid of them. Seeing lights in the sky meant nothing compared to what I had experienced. I hate to admit it, but Cody's sick plan to get me to stop being afraid of fireworks worked.
I was 18 when this happened. High school was finally coming to an end. Everyone was hugging their friends and promising to be in touch. Even my friends and I were emotional. The fact that 2 of us were leaving next week hit me like a brick to the face. We wanted to make the upcoming weekend memorable, so my friend Kevin suggested going on a road trip to the forest on the outskirts. It was a 45-minute drive from our town. We jammed the car full of food, camping stuff, and of course tons of drinks. It was 4 of us, me, Kevin, Max, and Patrick. We were still looking for a spot when we got to the campsite. It was packed with campers and tents. Man, this place is flooding with babes in birthday suits. Shut up, Max. Well, what do we do now?
I say we drive until we leave this crowd.
We agreed with Patrick and didn't get down from the car. I started the engine. Honestly, it was an all-boys trip and we wanted to have our own space. After driving for 15 minutes straight, we stumbled onto this narrow trail that went deep into the woods. A signboard was put up in the corner reading, "Deep Woods, camp at your own risk."
Guys, I don't know if it's a good idea to camp here. We could get lost.
Don't be a chicken.
It was our last trip before college, so I smiled and took the trail. The uncanny feeling of entering this part of the forest kept ringing in my mind like a red flag. Halfway down the trail, we found the perfect spot we were looking for. Patrick and Max started putting up the tent while Kevin and I hoarded wood for the bonfire. The weather was rainy and humid, so we spent the first few hours inside the tent, just making fun of each other and drinking. We were enjoying the moment when Kevin said, "Is someone walking on our site right now?" I poked my head out of the tent, thinking there'd be some wild animal, but there was nothing. "No, there's no one out there. You're drunk, dude." Kevin felt embarrassed and we made fun of him. At around 3 p.m., the sky got clear. We came out of the tent and realized it was going to be dark soon.
Hey, let's explore the surroundings before the light fades out.
Alright, let's go. Kevin and Max stayed back at the campsite. They wanted to get started on dinner, so Patrick and I went without them. Our crunching footsteps on the wet leaves echoed into the woods. I don't think there's any other campers here except us. With the mixture of the tall trees, the hooting owl, and the breezing wind, the atmosphere was honestly quite thrilling. Being drunk, we didn't realize how far we had come from the campground. Suddenly, we heard music in the distance. It sounded like someone was listening to the radio. Am I going crazy, or do you also hear music?
You're not crazy. I hear it too. It seems like it's coming from the end of that small trail.
So far, I overlooked a second trail heading to our left. We followed that trail. Yes, that was our mistake number 2. After 5 minutes, we reached this small campground that looked like a mess. An old rusty RV was parked under the tree. Tattered trousers, shirts, and socks were strung up in a row. A bunch of coolers and damaged car batteries were scattered around the van. Whoever owned these things was undoubtedly living off this van for quite some time. Patrick pointed at a pile of blankets lying on the ground.
Dude, I think there's something under this.
Don't touch it, dude. We don't even know. But Patrick reached out to grab the blanket when suddenly it jumped on him.
Oh, you damn dog!
What we guessed was a blanket was a giant boarhound dog with wrinkled skin like my grandpa. Have a feeling we shouldn't be here, dude.
Yeah, let's go back.
Patrick and I turned around when we heard a coarse voice behind us. Need anything, boys? A man was staring at us from the window of the RV. He waved at us, and I had to smile to drive away the awkwardness.
No, sir. We were only fooling around. Sorry to disturb you. We were about to head back.
What? No, it's alright. I hardly get visitors.
He came out of the RV to talk to us. He was tall and partially bald. The amount of brown hair poking from his head reminded me of the uneven lawn of my house.
Why don't you boys come into my van for a drink?
Patrick and I exchanged a worried look. Even though the man appeared friendly, he gave off weird vibes. But just to be polite, we did go in. The inside of the van was way worse than its outside. Not just that, the van was covered in uncomfortable cutouts from adult magazines. Being boys, we could still ignore them. But what made me shiver was the big shiny chopper kept on his bed. It was the only thing that seemed clean and well taken care of.
That's just for protection. There are bad people in this world, you know?
Yeah. So how long have you been living here?
Long before you hit puberty.
His joke wasn't funny at all. He handed us his drinks and told us where to check out in this national park. After a few more minutes, we got up to leave when the man suddenly grabbed my hand and asked in an almost whispering voice, "Hey, how many of you are there?" There's 4 of us, but why? We're at a risk. It's just not really worth it, I think. I just don't want to be able to hide all the bodies, wouldn't be able to hide all the evidence. It'd just be too much. One of them could run. I can't be chasing them right now. I can't be doing this shit. He went on muttering to himself, and we could hardly make out what he was saying. We finally came back to the campsite. That night, I almost slept with one eye open. The smiling face of that man kept flashing in front of my eyes. Even though he looked normal, something didn't seem right about him. We came back from the trip and our lives moved on. After 2 months, I was at my girlfriend's house when Patrick called me.
Dude, check the news now!
Why? What happened?
It's that guy from the campsite. He's been arrested for murder. What?
The story you just saw is based on the true incident uploaded by a Redditor with the username Dr. Jim Danger. The Redditor was 18 when he and some friends took a road trip to the Apalachicola National Forest near Tallahassee, Florida. Their goal was to get away from people, so they found themselves driving far into the woods. After they set up camp and had a few drinks, he and a friend decided to explore the surrounding forest. They found another trail and started following it, but the further they went, the more apparent it became that someone was living there. Eventually, they came to the campsite of an older man living out of his van. His clothes were strung up, coolers were scattered around, and a dog was sprawled beside the truck. The user and his friend tried to back out without being seen, but the man caught sight of them and called them over. He asked them friendly questions and offered places they should check out in the park. After about 10 minutes of talking, they returned to their own campsite. The man was a little strange but seemed perfectly harmless. But fast forward 2 months, and the Reddit user's friend calls and tells him to turn on the television. There, on screen, was the man they met in the woods that night, on trial for 4 murders. The man was none other than Gary Hilton, a former Army veteran infamously known as the National Forest serial killer. He admitted to killing and decapitating at least 4 hikers over the years. Hilton would camp in forests and prey on defenseless walkers until January 2008, when he was arrested following the disappearance of Meredith Emerson. Meredith Emerson, a 24-year-old sales manager and University of Georgia graduate, was murdered in January 2008 by Gary Hilton while hiking on Blood Mountain in Georgia. Her cause of death was eventually determined to be blunt force trauma to the head.
Hansel, I think you went too far with the joke. Maybe, but this is Halloween.
Anyway, we're going home. Are you sure you don't want to ride?
Don't worry. You live on the other side. I'll hitch a ride. See you at my house tonight. Hey guys, my name is Hansel, and as you can see, I love Halloween. After having lunch with my friends, I tried to hitch a ride home, and surprisingly, someone stopped to pick me up. When I got into the van, there were women weirdly dressed. They told me that those were their witch outfits. At first, they were all very nice with me. They made jokes that were actually witches disguised as humans, and I laughed. But after a few seconds, everything got weird. The girls wouldn't take their eyes off me, and for no reason, they started laughing frantically. I didn't know how to react. The van went over a dark bridge and I couldn't see anything else. At times, strands of light entered the van, and in those fractions of a second, I could see the girls' faces. Their faces were wrinkled and deformed. They were all still laughing in a sickly way. I could feel, in the darkness, how one of them jumped towards me and started kissing me passionately. As she did so, I felt dozens of worms enter my mouth and crawl down my throat. I wanted to push her away, but my body couldn't move. As if nothing had happened, we left the bridge, and all the girls acted as if nothing had happened, although they were still smiling ironically at each other. Desperate, I asked them to let me out, and they didn't object.
I got out of the truck and ran in the opposite direction from where they were driving, but suddenly, the van turned around and tried to run me over. I threw myself down the side of the road, and as I was falling, I noticed that the van was empty. No one was driving it. I desperately ran through the small forest looking for a way to get back to the road on the other side. Along the way, I could hear laughter and shadows moving through the vegetation. I tried to ignore everything I was feeling, and I just ran through the forest hoping to get lucky. After a few minutes, I came across a cabin. Surely, there would be someone there who could help me, or they had a phone. When I entered, it looked very neglected and almost abandoned, but it wasn't, because there was someone inside. "Sir? Sorry to have entered your cabin like this, but you have to help me." I stopped my walk when I was about to touch this person's back. Those clothes, that physical connection, this was my friend. The man turned around by himself, and unlike my friend, he had an extra layer of skin on his face. The skin was broken at the mouth part, revealing a huge black hole. He lunged at me, so I used the hammer I still had in my hand to knock him down. Stunned by the blow, the creature slowed down and gave me time to jump out of the window and continue running through the forest. I had lost the hammer, but I had survived. After almost an hour of desperate running, I found the road again, and even better, a passing car stopped to check to see if I was okay. As I got into the car, the couple driving the car offered me a ride to the hospital, and I calmly closed my eyes and allowed myself to relax. That laugh was familiar. I opened my eyes again, and I was no longer in the car, but in the van. I turned around and noticed that we were just over the bridge. Everything that had happened, hadn't it?
I still didn't lose my touch. Looks like my kiss left you hallucinating.
I tried to attack them with my hammer, but it was pointless. I couldn't move. My body was totally paralyzed. The witches tore my shirt, and with black lipsticks, they drew strange symbols on my body. One of them got on top of me again and opened her mouth, but this time it was not to kiss me. From it came out a strange insect in the shape of a fetus. This insect had eyes and fangs, but it was full of blood and liquids. Without controlling it, my mouth opened on its own, and I could see it slowly crawl into my mouth. I could feel it going down my throat as I choked slowly. My eyes began to close, and when I opened them again, I was in my bed. I didn't know how I got there or what happened that day, but it was definitely real. From that day on, I started sleeping more and more, but every time I woke up, I was more tired than the night before. Also, I could swear that every time I woke up, things in my house were placed differently. This may sound crazy, but I feel that there's someone inside me, slowly taking over my body. Suddenly, I heard the doorbell ring, and when I looked through the camera, I see that my friends have arrived. Why did they come? They never come unannounced, and I didn't talk to them. Something strange is happening to me. I feel very tired. I'm very sleepy.
Hey, Hansel. Are you okay? You sounded weird when you told us to come.
I was feeling a little sick, but I'm better now. Sit down. I'll get you something to drink.